our fourth day of this summit. From wherever you are, we shall be starting or commencing in a few minutes. My job is really just to welcome you. There are a few more participants still joining in on this special occasion. So if you're joining us for the first time, we have already had 3 days of deliberations under our belt and moving towards our final day, which will be tomorrow. And we really want to recognize your being here with us and to thank you for taking out the time for what is really becoming a very significant and to ensure that the Africa Free Trade Zone is actually a success. So part of really the DNA behind our time together is to try and interrogate the various thought processes and practices that will come thereafter that will help us with really determining for ourselves the way forward. So you'll be hearing today more around innovation. Yesterday, we really were focusing on Africa's innovation. Really, yesterday, we were focusing on the strategic opportunities that we can talk about, which showcased the president of Botswana, who gave a very, very well thought through presentation, which I would highly recommend that when the videos of the summit are available, that you'd go back and look at that, because amongst the things that he said that stood out for me is when he contextualized our situation around the COVID-19 crisis. He said that it has actually created an opportunity for young people in particular to thrive, given that we are in a continent where there is really high numbers of unemployment amongst our young people. That thought is something I took away from his presentation yesterday to really help us with the way forward in terms of what we can do as a continent. So it's just to really get you geared into our conversation today, which will get more and more into Africa's innovators. So now that we have been thinking and talking around the opportunities that we have on this continent, where to from here? How do we get these innovators? Because if you look at our continent, there are many. If you read a few more historical books, you actually see that there's also a number of inventions and discoveries that are attributed to Africans that may have been celebrated elsewhere in the world. So we really want to go back and talk about, so mindful of the fact that we have 3 sessions. We're going to have to be very tight on time to ensure that we take in as much as we can. We don't have all afternoon and all evening, unfortunately. We have 3 hours in total, so we're gonna need to really harness our times to make sure that we get as much as we can. So we do have a lot of the profiles for the speakers that are available on our website. So we want to go out of our way in terms of really going to the background of all our speakers and presenters. If you would really excuse us for not getting into that detail, so we can really save on time as much as possible. So we are grateful for that. So without further ado, Your Excellencies, the ambassadors in attendance, honorable ministers and members of parliament, our distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we want to welcome you to this special day that we are gathering together, and we really want to get on going. So I will hand over already now to our two moderators who will be taking over this very moment and introducing our keynote speaker. So feel welcome, and we are looking forward to robust discussions, deliberations. Thank you very much. Mr. Jeff and Emmanuel, please, you may take over.
Good afternoon, Sam. If you can hear me. Can you hear me? I think you have to unmute yourself.
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
I believe Mr. Koinange is unable to make it, so I'll be taking over. So thank you very much for the introduction. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to day 4 of the Africa Private Sector Summit, AP Biz Wrongs. That's BIZ Wrongs. My name is Emmanuel K. Benson Jr., so I'm the Deputy Executive Director of AfCFTA Policy Network, which is a membership-based think tank in Accra, seeking to help implement AfCFTA with collaboration between relevant stakeholders, such as the Ministry of Trade and Industry, and then the AU's Department of Trade and Industry, and others as well who have experience to help make this a reality. So I'm privileged and humbled to be leading on the communications as well. So to make sure that everything goes smoothly today, I want to keep the time as much as possible. And I think some of you made it very clear about the profiles that will be on the website, so that people can find it there, so that we can stick to time. But I'm also doing this moderation with a powerful trio, my live tweeting crew, who are spread across East Africa Community and SADC regions. So we have Valerie in Kenya, we have Margaret in Botswana, and then we have Kagiso in Zambia, who have been live tweeting for the past 4 days and who will end tomorrow. So for those who are very active on social media, or maybe not very active, you can also follow some of the developments around what has transpired over the past 4 days on Twitter as well. They've been doing very comprehensive updates, and they've done very well. And I think it speaks also to how we are seeking to empower youth and seeking to empower women as well by ensuring that we're reminding ourselves that women can also do very great things. It doesn't always have to be men leading. Now, suffice to say, the APSS, the Africa Private Sector Summit, believes in empowering everybody. But as Sam rightly spoke to, there's going to be sessions for women and youth. But at the end of the day, I think what we want to take home away, what we want to take away from this conference is the fact that a new tripartite conversation has been started with the APSS, and that is private sector. Without that, everybody has a say, especially the private sector. But the extent to which private sector can take part in the African Continental Free Trade Area has to also be done, not necessarily equitably, but also in a rules-based way. And forward, we must think through on how to create a free trade area that is also equitable. Let's not forget, for example, that in 2005, the free trade area of the Americas collapsed because it spoke only to big business of the US. There were protocols that spoke to protecting investors rather than civil society organizations, and civil society was largely excluded. So you had Mexicans, you had Canadians, and large part of Southern Americans who were not part of the process, who were not inclusive. The difference between the FTAA that failed in 2005 and what we see now with the African Continental Free Trade Area is a very different enterprise. At the end of the day, the African Continental Free Trade Area remains a part of Agenda 2063, one of the flagship programs. And so with that in mind, I think we're trying to create the Africa we want. But the Africa we want also includes African private sector doing things correctly, doing things ethically, doing things in a way that makes sure that everybody is affected. Women are affected, youth is affected, And the themes that we will speak to today are about innovation, for example. Who are the people who are going to do this kind of innovation? Who are going to spur this kind of innovation? The youth are going to be the ones as entrepreneurs who will come up with innovative ideas that will help spur development as well. So these are some of the things as we go forward in the panel today. The speakers will help us understand and help unpack. Now, I said I was going to try and keep this short, so let me wind down in just about 2 minutes. I think Sam has already spoken to the fact that there are 3 themes as the opening session, and the 2 other themes will be innovation for diversification, and then the last one will be SMEs, women and youth, and innovation frontiers. So I think without any further ado, we can really dig into the program. I think we all know why we're here. It is already day 4, so I think we've been following for the past 3 days. This is about the African Continental Free Trade Area. How do we make it equitable? How do we create the enabling environment? How do we ensure that everybody is able to participate? And I believe that we have with the opening remarks, Mr. Ahmed Tibau, who is the General Manager and CEO of the World Trade Center in Algeria. Mr. Tibau, if you are around, maybe you can begin to unmute your mic. Keep it, as succinct as possible so that we can get more questions from our lively audience. Thank you very much. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you. Then, Excellency Minister of Trade and Investment of Republic of Rwanda, Excellency former Minister of Trade, Republic of Ghana, Honorable Assistants. Then thank you to each and everyone who worked hard to organize this fantastic gathering. I'm very honored to be able to address key actors that work hard to make the vision of United Continent today. This year is the year where relentless efforts of visionary African leaders have been able to achieve a key goal, which is the launch of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. And I am very proud to be a speaker today here at this wonderful place with all of you to celebrate this consecration. Before we get started, I would like to express my sincere appreciation to all of you who generously work to make this event come together to become a success, especially to the Pan-African Chamber of Commerce and Industry. I know that the journey is long, but I hope that with all my heart that we will continue together as a family to develop the economy of our continent. At the beginning, I would like to highlight some points. First, as a reminder, the Inter-African Free Trade Agreement officially entered into place at the beginning of 2021. The objective of this agreement are to create a geographical area in which goods and services can circulate without restriction between the member states of the African Union. With a market of 1-2 billion people, worth $3 trillion and the domestic product of 2,500 billion, it is expected that the continent's economic potential and their capacities will be optimally exploited thanks to the intra-continental trade flows, which should be around 52% instead of the current rate of 60%. Compared to Europe or Asia, this rate around with the implementation of the agreement increased to create more wealth and allow more trade. 3, described by some economists as a new frontier for investors, Africa is expected to stir up more than 100 billion in FDI in future and attract many investors in search of new markets. In addition, 25% of humanity will live in Africa by 2050. The third of the world's mineral reserves are in Africa. This shows the importance of our continent in the future. Fourth, in Algeria, and as recalled by our Prime Minister during the last African Union meeting, the ratification of the agreement constitutes a strategic choice, requiring a concerted effort to move forward in achieving the development objectives of our continent and our countries, and the consolidation of peace and security closely linked to the progress of economic development. This agreement, is it sufficient to develop the economy of the continent? No. We have to be honest and say that the agreement alone will not substantially change the current situation, which is different from country to another one. Then the fifth point, I would like to highlight that apart from the recurring problems which regard to any agreement of this type, like the timetable of the tariff dismantling, the rules of origin, and the list of commitments relating to trade and in services, it is clear that each country needs to prepare the local environment that allows the establishment of a minimum condition to meet the noble objectives of this historical agreement. Six, indeed, it is the entire entrepreneurial ecosystem that must be rethought and developed to create the favorable condition to an orderly transition and to an efficient and innovative economy aimed at achieving the objectives of growing intra-African trade, to begin with by developing infrastructure that will facilitate the free movement of goods and services and people. By way of illustration, Algeria has developed projects which will inevitably benefit the agreement in that they will guarantee the essential logistics support, in particular through the Trans-Saharan road that links Algiers to Lagos, the gas pipeline between Algeria and Nigeria, the Algeria-Abuja fiber optic link, and the port of Shershel in the central western Algeria as a maritime freight hub. To achieve the objective 7, to achieve the objective of increasing exchanges, the development of entrepreneurship must become one of the most important economic and social development mechanisms, as it will not only create jobs, it will also create the condition for innovation to emergence. Indeed, African economies are called upon to make entrepreneurship the spearhead of their economic and social policies. The entrepreneurial mindset must be instilled in children from the earliest year of education in order to prepare the youth of today to become the business leaders of tomorrow. Education being an essential pillar of the development of African economies, each country should also put in place the condition for attracting major global business schools in the world so that they can be established in partnership with local institutions. Furthermore, each state should create the condition to develop the partnership between the universities, the local universities, and international universities, and the business community in order to enhance the applied research. The point 8 is regarding the entrepreneurship and innovation are inseparable. In Africa, is still behind in this regard. It is because the conditions for the emergence of an entrepreneurial spirit have not yet been essential to stimulate innovation, particularly concerning intellectual property rights, the emergence of an efficient financial market which can offer solutions adapted to young companies like startup or others, venture capital, investment funds, business angels, flexible regulation, etc. For example, according to a report published by the Work Intellectual Property Organization, WIPO, in terms of the institutional environment component of the indicator based on the quality of regulation, political stability, and the business climate. The African country which has the highest score is Mauritius and occupies the 24th position out of 141 countries. But in the top 50 Africa has only 5 countries. It is in this ranking, many African countries occupy the last places, which shows that it is urgent to prepare an adequate environment for the emergence of innovative companies capable of competing with the best. Thus, future African champions will create new opportunities for the development of clusters of innovative startups that will be used as a basis for the materialization of other startups, which will create automatically a virtuous and dynamic circle.
Mr. Tabauer, if you can hear me. Yes, not to cut you, but we also want to try and give the opportunity for our second speaker who will also be making his opening address.
Only 2 minutes. I'm finishing.
Okay, great. If you can kindly round up.
Thank you. Then we can do the same that would happen in the Silicon Valley. It's a good example. All African countries have the chance to have a dynamic diaspora which can support the new challenges of their countries. The action can be only successful through development of strong private sector, free of bureaucratic red tapes, and relying on new technology and the creation of dynamic startups. I think at the end, I would like to highlight that in this context, it is necessary for each African country, especially those who single exporters, to invest in the diversification of their economy in order to create the condition of attractiveness for new investments, and therefore to develop export, thus requiring state entrepreneurship, partnership with companies where each party will have to play its proper role. African states can play a key role in this by putting in place an environment where efficient companies can develop their business in a climate free from bureaucratic approach and blockages of all kinds. In the second side, entrepreneurs getting directly involved in this new dynamic by improving their governance, training their staff, developing investment to improve the quality of product, certifying their management in order to be ready to compete in the local markets and win the export battle. And at the end, I would like also, it is imperative to create a fund to help certain countries to raise their economies to acceptable level as other regional organizations have already done. Then, thank you. I would like only, don't want to take so much time. I need to leave some time for our panelists. So a very warm thank you to each and every one of you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And kindly patient, and I like the points you made about entrepreneurship, speaking to the issue of inclusiveness as well, which is right on point for the next panelist, Dr. Ekosbio Gabra, who is the chairman of the African Business Center for Developing Education. As Dr. Samandoga said, profiles can be found on the website africaprivatesectorsummit.org. So we won't get into that. We really want to get into the substance of what he has to say. So Dr. Spiogabra, hello, welcome, and kindly make your presentation. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bansa, and I hope you and your other colleagues can hear me. I also want to share my appreciation for the organizers and all of us who have been listening and playing various roles since the beginning of this interaction, I believe on Monday. But we are now supposed to focus on issues of innovation and the challenges facing the AfCFTA with regards to a non-innovating Africa. So what is the problem we are trying to resolve? Africa is not innovating. Africa is not currently globally associated with any significant inventions or products that have been manufactured and that are in large quantity supplying the world markets. Of course, we start with acknowledging that Africa currently accounts for just 2% of global trade. About the technology and technical sector, and I'm not a scientist, I wish I were, Africa probably doesn't account for more. I mean, the 2% Africa production of that quantum, I'm sure very little, probably in the minutiae of points accounted for by technology, innovation, and products that we ourselves have developed. So the African economies currently are completely flooded by foreign produced goods and services. And of course, the Africa Continental Free Trade Area project is partly or significantly intended to address this. But if you're not careful, all we shall do is to be buying and selling, notwithstanding all the rules of origin that we intend to comply with, products that are 50% or more produced outside the African continent, and where people are just packaging the product and selling them off with a brand, an African brand across the African continent to be consumed by other African countries. So I think if you take a look at our individual African countries, and we go to any average mall or consumer company, a shop where you can buy goods and services, if you just take a look at the labels and the countries from which the products that you are about to buy come from, it tells you a whole story. You may find that my country, Ghana, for example, when 10% of the goods in our shops will be made in Ghana. So in my era as Minister of Trade Industry, I tried very hard to promote a Made in Ghana campaign. But this is a campaign that we attempted to embark on with zero governmental funding and with very negligible private sector support or funding either. The private sector, of course, generally welcomed it in principle, but were not ready or willing to put their hands where their mouths were, because after all, I mean, an improvement in the number of products made in Ghana, produced in Ghana, and sold in Ghana and outside Ghana would be to the benefit of the private sector. They were the very people that we were trying to promote the Made in Ghana campaign for. But much as there was a lot of lip service towards this campaign, we didn't get public sector funding and we didn't get any really private sector funding. So our main achievement was to produce a logo, which we then asked the private sector to use in marking goods that have been produced in Ghana as Made in Ghana products, so that our own nationals, our own citizens made in Ghana, versus buying a product made elsewhere, would choose the Ghanaian made product, even if it was more expensive than the non-Ghanaian made product. But that also obviously was a challenge. So innovation obviously goes to the heart of it. In Ghana, for example, we have 12 different institutes of science. You have which are part of the national, the Council on Scientific and Industrial Research. That's the broad name of the organization. Only one person claimed to have a science and technology background. Now, the fact I was even asking the question surprised many of them, because nobody had asked them those questions before. So that told me the kind of challenge that we're going to face, because I was going to be dealing mostly with civil servants who would push nice paper, but hardly any of them who understood the scientific background to whatever they were doing. So if we are going to promote science and technology, this is why, after a lot of thought, I established 10 years ago the Africa Business Center for Developing Education, which I'm recognized in this conference by that acronym, ABCDE, which means getting back to basics. We need to get our A's and B's and C's and D's and E's together as Africans if we are truly going to compete in this very challenging global economy, where goods are hitting our shores from all over the world, but we ourselves are making few of the goods that we want to trade in. So we cannot be trading among ourselves, mostly in goods produced by outsiders. So the Made in Ghana campaign didn't go far because of lack of funding. But
1 minute, please.
How many? 1 minute?
Yes, please.
All right, but the building blocks of trade and industry itself, which goes to the heart of the educational system, also doesn't consciously produce people who are ready to make goods. The vice chancellor of one of the universities in Ghana famously said that the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, one of the most famous universities in Ghana, is not an institution for which trains people on how to make things, but it trains them to know how things are made. Mm-hmm. a vice chancellor of a university. And that quotation I quoted in Ghana to tell us all how bankrupt our thinking was with regards to. So the discussion, of course, can continue for the African Continental Area to achieve its objectives. But I think that the fundamentals of Ghana had 300 industries under Kwame Nkrumah, our first president. Homemade industries which could manufacture everything from soup to nuts and everything between, agro processing, wood processing. All those companies were collapsed by succeeding governments with the inspiration of the CIA. So hopefully, under the new Biden administration, we'll make progress.
Dr. Spiogabra,
cooperating along the African lines to make Africa a better continent that we found it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so very much. And kindly rest assured that, time to speak. So finally, for this, to close on this session, we have the keynote address that is from the Minister of Trade and Industry in Rwanda, Honorable Soraya M. Hakuziyaremye. If you are here with us, please, you can begin to kindly unmute your mic, Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Thank you very much. Honorable Ministers.
So you have 10 minutes, please.
Honorable Ministers, Excellency Ambassadors, Dr. Spio Garbra, Chairman of the African Business Center for the Developing Education, Manager and CEO of the World Trade Center in Algeria, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. On behalf of His Excellency, President Paul Kagame of the Republic of Rwanda, allow me to first of all thank the organizers of the Africa Private Sector Summit for the invitation to the government of Rwanda. This is a good opportunity for us to exchange on how governments can mainstream private sector in policy reforms for an enabling business environment across Africa. And today's topic on Africa's innovators and frontiers for business diversification comes with current experiences triggered by the COVID-19 global pandemic, which is causing large-scale loss of life and a major economic crisis. With disruption that we've seen in production, but also supply chains across the globe. However, the COVID-19 pandemic has brought its imperatives, which include new business thinking that calls for both new and existing entrepreneurs to innovate and cultivate technical know-how of business management during and beyond the pandemic. Distinguished participants, as a result of the global pandemic, we have had to rethink our engagement strategies, focusing more on opportunities in Africa through increased collaborations with the private sector. That constant dialogue is essential in public-private sector partnerships as we promote Africa's innovators and business diversification. For example, in Rwanda, at the end of last year, through collaboration and extensive consultations with entrepreneurs, the government adopted a new entrepreneurship development policy to support private sector entrepreneurs and provide the necessary environment for private sector dynamism, innovation, and risk-taking, which are required for a modern, sophisticated, and rapidly growing economy. We have shifted our focus to the creation of an innovation ecosystem instead of the traditional support to micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises in terms of funding and capacity building. In the same line, the promotion of intellectual property rights for the development of services and increased innovations is expected to lead an innovation-driven local business sector. This will produce globally competitive, high-value goods and services that we hope will contribute towards the transformation of Rwanda into an upper middle-income country by 2035. In addition, over and above the policy reforms, innovation requires operational instruments to materialize the results. In our case as Rwanda, we have established the Kigali Innovation City, which is a $2 billion mixed-use innovation city that seeks to facilitate the development of Pan-African talent, young innovators, and also act as a technology innovation hub. The Kigali Innovation City already houses international universities, such as the Carnegie Mellon Africa Campus, the African Leadership University, as well as the Africa Institute of Mathematics firms, with the aim of attracting innovative and technology-driven companies from all over the world in order to really create a technology ecosystem and further contribute to their knowledge-based economy. Ladies and gentlemen, in thinking of disruptive innovations, we have also put in place government institutions, services such as Irembo, which is a government e-services platform that has digitized over 100 public services and has the potential to build an ecosystem for other startups to plug into their infrastructure. On the private sector side, a local company, AC Group, developed Tap and Go, which is a system that we use for digital payments for public transport. And the system, which started in Rwanda, has now been exported and is operational in Cameroon and will soon enter Kenya. In the healthcare sector, we also have a company called Charis UAS, which provides cutting-edge drone data collection and aerial photography services. And they have assisted the government during this pandemic in public announcement during COVID-19, as well as carrying out research on malaria. They are also establishing the first commercial drone manufacturing plant in Rwanda. And within the agricultural sector, Charis UAS also works with farmers in aerial crop scouting, crop damage assessment, spraying and protection, and much more. All I would give was Kasha, which is an e-commerce company for women's health and personal care, which started in Rwanda and has now expanded to Kenya. These are some of the examples of disruptive innovations that have changed the course of service delivery in the country, as well as on the continent. My last point will be on the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement. As Africa is working to liberalize and diversify trade by addressing impediments to competitiveness and unlocking new market opportunities for both goods and services for our youth and our women and our small and medium-sized companies, it will be crucial to enhance the capacity of our private sector to formulate business ideas, to assess and to select the most profitable and sustainable projects, and be able to develop viable and high-growth business ventures. The AfCFTA has the capacity to streamline fragmented markets on our continent, and especially for innovation, allow for scalability. In addition, with platforms like the Smart Africa Alliance, which now has 30 member states in Africa, industry partners can work together in policy development across Africa, leveraging lessons learned and best practices from each other, while applying them to the specificities of each market to maximize efficiency across the board. If we are to build and protect resilience of our economies, especially given the experience that the private sector has had during the COVID-19 pandemic,
Hello, Honorable. Are you still there? It looks like her feed has stalled. I'm not sure if I'm the only one who sees that the feed is stalled. Yeah, there's no voice. Yeah, I think there's a problem with the feed. Just to remind those who are listening in English and French, there's interpretation, English, French, Arabic interpretation. So please feel free to Hello. Okay. Anyway, it looks like we've lost the feed. Let's quickly then. I'm sure we can get her to continue once she returns. What I'm going to do is, Doctor is ready. If not, maybe we can proceed to questions just for about 5 minutes, and then maybe we can get to the rapporteur after the 5 minutes. What do you think?
Yeah, let's go to the questions, and then just before we start our second session, then we can take in the repertoires. I didn't want our keynote speakers to be waiting much longer.
Okay.
So go ahead and take the questions. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, so the floor is open to questions. I'm just giving 5 minutes. For those who are on social media, you can follow hashtag APSS. That's not very difficult to remember. Hashtag APSS and hashtag writing BIZ wrongs. So you don't have to look for anybody. You just look for that hashtag, and you can follow the live tweeting being done by the crew. So anybody who has questions, feel free to raise your hand. I see Bibini, Abua Bibini. That's a curious name. And then Kofi Fresh, another curious name. But let's hear you, Abua Bibini. Go ahead. Kindly unmute and then ask your question.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me now?
Your sound is a bit muffled. If you can come a bit more closely to the mic.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
I believe we can all hear you. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. I am Awan Bini, currently living in Finland, and I'm highly interested in business opportunities in Africa. But the problem I've encountered or I've realized now is the hindrances on operating business in Africa. Example, I led a team some years back to my country, and the bureaucracy level there, we all came back with nothing concrete. I will urge all this noble platform and leaders here that the bureaucracy is too much. It's killing the business interest people go to here, go there, go and see this man. So much go there, come here. It's killing interest. Let's open the market to people who are willing to genuinely invest in Africa for them to take that opportunity. This is the best time because currently, if you look at all the trends, markets in Europeans are falling down, but those in Africa are coming up because of the COVID. I don't know if it's just a trend or something, but the opportunity to invest is being hampered by bureaucratic tendencies. Please open up. I know there's Dr. Gabriel here. I would like to talk to him after this, and big people are there and open.
Okay.
Let's open our arms. Thank you very much.
Okay, Abuabibini, thank you very much. I think your point is clear. Kofi Fresh, please go ahead. 1 minute. Kofi Fresh.
Yeah, hello. Yes, it's Kofi Kwamina. Fresh is my nickname. By the way, I think this question has been asked before on various platforms, and it's about the existing treaties and agreements on the continent. How does the African Free Trade Agreement override these existing agreements? Because some of these agreements do span over a long period of time. And how does it enable the new entrants to the market in the Africa Free Trade Agreement? And second,
if I may kindly interrupt, hold your questions. The minister is back. Once she returns and once she's done, we can get back to you very quickly. So please try and summarize your point so that when she's done, we can get back to you. Thank you very much for your understanding.
Right. Okay, thank you.
So, Honorable Minister, if we can have you back, if you can kindly unmute your mic.
Hello.
Honorable Minister.
Back. I don't think she's back. I can't see her.
Oh, kindly bear with me. My tech people, if you can kindly, if she needs to be let in again. let's see what we can do. I don't. Okay, let's just continue with the question, and then once I'm sure you understand that I'll have to stop you once we get it. Okay, I understand that she's trying to get in. Nonetheless, please continue with your question, and then we'll do the necessary once she enters. Please go on.
Yeah, okay. And the second one is that the agreement is signed, ratified with amongst nation states. Unfortunately, I think because of the political changes across nation states, we have political presidents who may come over after 5 years' time and want to reverse what has been signed on understanding that they are in power and therefore they are not happy with this agreement. They want to sign it rather an agreement with a different country outside the continent. I think there's clarity needs to be needed. That once we have this agreement across nation states, it's all bound and all over, and so that nobody can override them. That's my point.
Okay, thank you very much for your point. Can we get to Michael Esun? Hello, Michael Esun. If your hand is up, if you can kindly.
Hello, Michael. Please unmute yourself.
Hello.
Okay.
Hello.
Also, Michael Esun. So who's on the line? Is it David Ja?
That's Michael.
Michael.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Your line is very bad.
It seems his connectivity is very bad.
Your connectivity is. Ask your question. Keep your question for later, please, or enter it in the chat here. Okay, go ahead, Michael. Make it snappy. 1 minute.
Good afternoon.
Yes. Good afternoon. 1 minute, please. Oh, okay, David. Is it David speaking?
David Ja, please unmute yourself.
Yes, so thank you very much. We've been enjoying this program since it started. My question is, we need to have a very deliberate position paper on key areas so it's involved in scaling trade in AfCFTA. And one of those areas is our position with the banks. I hope the banks are here, and I hope we invited bank managers and EDs. They are the very biggest problems that we have on the continent, especially with cross-border payment and dynamic currency with regards to the central banks. They have to ensure that we lower the cost of payment and transfer. To have a position paper on that and to the Secretariat, and also monitoring of that position paper and what the Secretariat will do in engaging the banks. 50% of human activity is payment, and if we can't solve the payment side of it, it's very difficult. The other one is data. What are we doing in ensuring that we have enough data to determine what trade is going to look like and the obstacles that are going to be, and how we will overcome those challenges? Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much. I think we'll end with the questions here. Anybody with questions can kindly enter it in the chat area, and we'll do our best to do follow-ups. I believe that Honorable Minister Hakuzi Aremye is trying to get back in to come and complete her keynote address. Those are the signals I'm getting. If not, we'll definitely have to let her finish. Nonetheless, let's get to the rapporteurs. Dr. Sam Ndoga, what do you think? Can we get to the rapporteurs and then we switch over to session 2?
Yes, let's Yes, let's go ahead and do that. If our repertoire is ready to take 3 minutes, and then we can move to session number 2. Thank you so much for your participation, everybody.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Ndoga. All right. So could we have the rapporteur join us?
Yes. Good afternoon, Benson. My name is Irene. I would like to be excused for my video to be off because of internet connectivity issues. And so mine is for yesterday's session, that is day 3. And it was a very packed session. And we still were on the topic of righting the wrongs of doing business in Africa. And so just the start of it started around 2:15 with some giving the opening and then also welcoming the president of Botswana, His Excellency Dr. Ike Masisi. And then the focus of his speech was finding the strategic opportunities for doing business in Africa for maximum impact. 19 on trade and business and everything related to the private sector. And he said the AfCFTA presents a golden opportunity to support the efforts to create the Africa we want, and highlighted the importance of the AfCFTA and Africa's integration agenda because it covers about 1.2 billion people and $1.5 trillion across the African Union. He also indicated the private sector role in implementing the AfCFTA, which is crucial, but also will emphasize that the private sector cannot be effective without the support of government. He reiterated the need to trade among African countries and build strategic partnership with other emerging economies. He also touched on knowledge-based economies and strong emphasis on e-commerce to benefits of the AfCFTA. So these are some of the key points of his speech. And one is to build capacities to produce tradables for diversification in sectors such as agriculture, agro-processing, mining, manufacturing, ICT, among others. His second point was to implement policies and measures that would provide enabling environment for doing business, such as access to finance to SMEs, women and youth, facilitating cross-border trade, enhance access to information technology for business and innovation. Thirdly, he also urged the African Union Commission to adopt a cluster-based approach which prioritize critical sectors with greater benefit and potential. And lastly, he said Africa countries need to invest in the digital sector and address policy constraints to unleash the entrepreneurial spirit of the youth. He ended his speech with a sincere gratitude and appreciation to frontline workers. So we had 2 other sessions yesterday. With my limited time, I'll hint on about 2 of the facilitators for the second session. So the moderators was Dr. Margaret King and Nadira Bayat, and then they also had the same topic, which is finding strategic opportunities for doing business in Africa for maximum input. So Mr. Peter Van Dale, who is the CEO of SADC Business Council, an apex body of business association of 16 SADC member countries, had their specific role as policy advisory, business development service, business-to-business activities, training, and workshops. And this is what he said, what he meant by what free trade means to them, is that there are 3 key things, and these are non-tariff trade facilitation and resolving trade barriers. And these are some key points from his presentation: the need for permanent structure to resolve non-tariff barriers and trade facilitation issues, cargo management to reduce costs, provide infrastructure improvement for export of goods and incentivize transportation across corridors, and cooperations between public and private sectors and trade facilitation, regional infrastructure and regional value chain to successfully provide jobs and opportunities for African countries. We would also take one from Mr. Kabin for the second session, and said he is from Botswana. He said the CFTA is about regional integration for African producers to have access to large markets, encourage trade and investment, boosts productivity, and encourage diversification, which is cites Botswana is serious about diversification because for years they have heavily dependent on their diamond resources for growth. He highlighted that Botswana being a small economy, it is important for the education of its citizens to understand the impact of the AfCFTA and how they can take advantages of that. So the key point from his presentation was that to take a cognizant look at policies and various efforts to improve infrastructure, collaboration between public and private sectors and private sectors, strong political commitment for integration to happen. And also ended the speech by saying that Botswana is open to investors to its country. And so we go to the session 3, which started with a speech by presentation by Joseph Atamensa, and he was to talk on how to reduce the cost of doing business to support free trade area. And he emphasized that free trade cannot be possible with bottlenecks in terms of logistics and transactional cost, and trade is a strategy to reduce poverty in Africa. These are some of his listed points, and his point is that to look at logistics as a whole or trade facilitation, they need to get the macroeconomics right by having better monetary policies, fiscal policies also should be done right, and introduce
Yeah. Try and sum up, please.
Yeah, so I'm getting on the last point. Find a payment monetary system for the informal sector, largely who are women, and also would take the last one from Dr. Papakwesi Indum on the key sectors that needs to be prioritized in doing business through the CFTA. And he said the key areas are food production, food processing, banking, and finance. And also another critical section that we should look at is education. And so thank you very much. This is a brief summary of what happened yesterday.
Okay. Dufia, thank you very much. Dufia is a rapporteur for day 3 of the Africa Private Sector Summit. You are still with us at the Africa Private Sector Summit. So we've just closed session 1, and we've had the report by the rapporteur. What we're trying to do is still get the conclusion of the speech. Unfortunately, if we don't get it, we'll need to continue, proceed to session 2. So if you are ready with session 2, we are still talking about innovation, and we're talking about innovation for diversification. Let me just give you a quick rundown of the panel panelists.
The ministers.
Yeah. Okay. I believe. Okay, so Honorable Soraya. Kindly go ahead. Kindly continue for us.
Thank you, Emmanuel, and apologies for the cut on network. So happy that I'm back. I was really concluding my remarks and just pointing again to the duty of policymakers in general to facilitate innovative solutions for value addition specifically and diversification of our economies. And this will enable not only a competitive private sector that is integrated into global markets, but also ensure a level playing field and the protection of intellectual property right. And this can only be realized through strong collaboration with all stakeholders, public sector, academia, financial institutions, development partners, and most importantly, innovators themselves. I thank you again for your kind attention and look forward to fruitful deliberations in the sessions ahead. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Honorable Soraya Hakuziyarami. Thank you very much. I believe we can now continue session 2. And session 2, we're going to start with the AE Trade Group. But before that, let me just lay the background for the title, because like I said, we're still sticking to the theme of innovation. The whole idea behind this, for those who may not necessarily understand why the conversation of innovation in the conversation of doing business around AfCFTA, is that we obviously need to develop and adopt new business and policy ideas that work. So it's important for us to begin to identify people who are creative and who can support and bring some of these things into the marketplace. I think what we have all learned from COVID, the whole of 2020, is that we can make lemonade from our lemons. Some of the examples include, the COVID test kits that many countries, including Ghana, were trying to set up, respirators developed by individuals, universities trying to find solutions to the whole COVID pandemic. I think what we can take away from COVID is that individuals have become more innovative in responding to what are essentially global challenges. And now that the African Continental Free Trade Area is here, I think it really makes sense that as we begin to talk about things like regional value chains, value addition, industrialization, and all these terms, they are not just big words that don't go anywhere. They are something practicable. The youth, as we all know, is teeming in its masses on the continent. About 60 to 70% of the continent is youth. This is the demographic that is going to bring and spur the innovation that we need. The conversation about women is a very different conversation as well, because they're already doing the business that we have all been experiencing. But what's about spurring innovation and getting people to start thinking new things for the larger market of the African Continental Free Trade Area? Policies already exist, like the accelerated policy on industrialization that the AU possesses. It's a largely unknown protocol document, but it is there. The AU has policies in the Africa Mining Vision. It has one on industrialization. And it has a whole lot of other ones that need to come to light now that the African Continental Free Trade Area is here. We're talking about doing business under the African Continental Free Trade Area. What do we need to do to make it a lot easier? So this is what we need to have in mind as we begin to have this panel. So I'm very happy to have experts who will help speak to this issue. Our first expert, whom I'm going to give 5 minutes to, only because of the interest of time, sir, is Mr. Mulalem Sium, who is the chairman of the AE Trade Group. The AE Trade Group is, and then you can go into speak to the issue. So please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, moderator. All protocol observed. The A-Trade Group is a digital capacity building, providing as a social entrepreneurship approach, bringing partnership with the number of stakeholders throughout the continent. Starting from the disruptive technologies using artificial intelligence, marketplace, cloud computing infrastructure, solar laptop manufacturing, a number of elements with various stakeholders within the continent that we work on. But coming up on the disruptive project is creating an ecosystem of innovations. Africa has a growing array of tech hubs and technopreneurs. Partnership provide access to innovations. It can turn into the use of the market presence for a product to gain and scalable and innovative into the mainstreams. The disrupted economy depends people who is creative, collaborative, and ready to embrace change. The innovations won't just be a tech industries, but also specialists, or it's not necessarily data scientists or tech specialists, but also people with the engagement skill to get closer to customer and understand their need. It is also important to think about the people who work alongside artificial intelligence with a new hybrid workforce. But all in all, what Africans in the private sector, what we need is to think of about a long-term investment approach. Investment that reaches in order to bring sustainable development in our continent is essential. We need to bring closer our scientists, our academia to participate. We need to change our mindset from short-term investment, moving toward long-term investment. What I'm saying by that is that in order to bring sustainable development in our continent, we need in other words, that we need to invest more in our research and innovations. We need more than ever to do business by collaborating. Collaboration is a new competition. Whether we are encourage a broader product development or protect against cyber attack or develop tomorrow's workforce can benefit from working together to achieve common goals and build resilience. These organizations can come in different legal form. They can be a private company, they can be a public company, they can be a non-for-profit companies, they can be a social entrepreneurs. The diversity of partnership that are needed is making public partnership a game changer. The challenge is the rigid legal policy environment that must change in order to facilitate this transformation. New business models are emerging and they need to be advocated by the private sector, by academia, and by policymakers. With today's business challenge and emerging risk for more and more industries, collaboration is not competition. It is a new path to solving large-scale challenges effectively. For many business, shifting business landscape and growing threat such as industry disruption, talent shortage, risk from connected and technology-based world, industry-wide challenges are often too large and complex for many to solve it is own. In the past, this need a big reluctance to share information in the traditional capitalist market. But now we are beginning to see industries come together, sharing selected data set with the competitors. Business leaders are willing to do this because sometimes the overall benefit outweigh the risk. So we need to adapt more.
1 minute. 1 minute, please. 1 minute, please.
All right.
Okay. So
the conclusion is, I wish to confirm that everything I have talking about is what the A-Trade Group is working on every day. As part of the strategic effort, we partner within a number of private sectors organizations, such as an example, most of the organizers, the Federation of West African Chamber of Commerce and Industry, COMESA Business Council, the African Leather and Leather Industries institutions, the Pan-African Chamber of Commerce and Industries, East African Chamber of Commerce, Industries and Agricultures. I commend your leadership and through you, all the Chamber of Commerce for adapting the new way of working and embracing the disruptive business method. The A-Trade Group is partnering with several business women's organizations and youth and associating at the national level who resides across the continent. The aim is to design and implement tools that future trade and governance by Africans for Africa that complement the role played by existing institutions at the continental, regional, and national level. The success of this continent-wide project is heavily depending on how much we can collaborate and work together. In this vein, the A-Trade Group is a member of the Interim Business Council, the African Business Council, official voice of the African private sector. I invite you to work with us to build a new culture and a way of doing business. We have started, and I wish to thank our partners, governments, in the government, the private sectors, among women and youth who see the benefit in trying a new approach. The end game is to create millions of jobs, decent jobs, which will make Africa the rich continent it deserves to be, the Africa we want. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mulalem Sium, Chairman of A-Trade Group. Thank you for making your speech as succinct as possible. I think you raised some very salient points. about AfCFTA and collaboration, and the way of making it work is through collaboration and getting decent work. Incidentally, a 2019 report of the International Labour Organization speaks to the issue of AfCFTA helping create decent work, which means that we can do it. But as long as we're able to do it through the regional economic communities and their protocols on mobility, those are the things we must focus on. So even the ILO is endorsing the AfCFTA in creating and facilitating decent work. So I believe that the private sector can also buy into this idea and make it work. So this tripartite arrangement that we have, academia, private sector, and public sector, is critical at this juncture, now that AfCFTA has taken off. So academia, still with academia, we have Professor Nkem Kumba, who is with the University of Michigan. Now, Professor, I know that you'd like to talk a lot more than 5 minutes, but I would kindly ask you to keep the time, 5 minutes. Everyone has a bonus and hidden 1 minute, which you will not see, but that's about the best that I can do for you. So please, 5 minutes, so that everyone can, say their piece. Thank you very much. The floor is yours, Professor.
Sure. Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you.
Very good. Thank you very much. And I'm so humbled and even more gratified to see that this is a forum being convened as a meeting ground between academia, industry, and policy people. This is something that we've always advocated on the continent for a long, long time, because there's a big disjuncture between those three communities. And those countries that have done very well, they've done well because those three communities have always worked together. Now, we're talking about innovation. The free trade area, in our perspective, has also been articulated, is meant to help the continent industrialize, add value to its raw products before exporting. And to industrialize means to adopt technology, to develop scientific manpower, to run the industry. Industry is not run on paperwork. It's run by real hardcore scientific and technological competencies. And so we also observe that the things that have held the continent back for the last many decades, post-independence, has been the fact that its higher education systems have been heavily compromised in terms of funding and manpower. And those countries that have done very well are those who have done very well, who have invested substantively in terms of developing scientific manpower. So the case we make for innovation on the continent is to use this opportunity for the free trade area and really calibrate lots of the discussions on the continent and pivot our higher education systems towards scientific know-how. The future that we want to embrace through this free trade area and all its conversations. The 50 years, the 2050 that we're looking at about the demographic bulge, that future will be heavily dominated still by scientific know-how. The last 50, 60 years post-independence, Africa heavily invested, if at all, in the humanities and social sciences. That depressed us. If you look from Angola, West Africa, Angola to say Cameroon, that whole coast is oil. You could barely have one petroleum school there that trains the labor force to run the petroleum industry by Africans for Africa. Now you need that kind of labor force to work in those industries, to be able to understand the mechanics of the industry so that they can now bring what we call innovation to add value and expand the ecosystem of what supplies those industries. Africa has some strategic advantages. The modern industries, high tech. But then the labor force from the continent that can work in those industries and help transform it is missing. So we think that to talk innovation is to talk about scientific innovation, technological innovation, is to recalibrate. Many of our universities on the continent, they are run by the public sector, by the minister, especially in the Francophone countries. The minister is the overall chancellor. It's a public sector thing. political overtones. And because of that, you don't quite get the kind of interaction with the private sector. The continent is said to, at this point, have about 400 companies that gross over $1 billion a year. 400 of them on the continent. I'm not sure how many are in the chambers or are in this conversation. But those are those companies that need to lead the kind of transformation that we're talking about. That the heavy investors who want to be globally competitive, as our colleagues with the Afro Champions have been telling us. But how do you do that without the manpower? So in our mind, the university system has to be completely reviewed and seen as a centerpiece of what Africa has to do in the next 50 years. Completely redirect, change its trajectory. If the former minister mentioned today that only about 2% of our global scientific output is African. And we're not just talking about, publications. We're talking about the kind of competencies that will run the machinery that we're talking about transforming the continent. Now, it so happens that a big part of that labor force as currently constituted for Africa is in the diaspora. In the diaspora. And while for over 30 years, that discussion has been on the table, the political class has not been willing to engage the diaspora at all in a meaningful way. That diaspora is developing lots of innovations and building big companies and doing well abroad, but they're not very welcome at home. So maybe the private sector out of this conversation can do what the political class has not been able to do for us. Actually bring the invited diaspora back to be part of this industrial transformation in terms of inviting them physically. I mean, in some conversations, and because of the technology, it's been suggested that the diaspora can be engaged through ICT. We are here talking on Zoom. I'm based in Michigan and in Accra. This is not what I'm. This is not what I mean. It's China that we always quote as an example. After the death of Mao Zedong.
1 minute, please.
Yes, yes. Within 20 years, 50% of university presidents in China were diaspora returnees that were brought back to come and help transform their university system for their industry. China has a program that they go abroad and recruit the top 1,000 Chinese from top universities and take them back home physically to go, and that's how they transform the system. You need the competencies and the know-how. That's how they do the innovation beyond just public discourse and policy statements. You need the human capital, the human competencies to do that. So, and without that diaspora engagement, it's difficult to to appropriately contextualize the conversation on Africa within the global context, because we're not isolated. We have the European competition, Asian competition, American competition. It's the diaspora that has that strong labor force that would, if were invited and given positions in these industries, they are the Africans. Many of them are well organized in big clusters, big associations to do Africa, but that interface is not there. So we would strongly invite the diaspora be invited and given avenues to have space to bring their competencies to lead this innovation. The last point I'll make is about the thing that our colleagues have been saying all this while. The mechanics of trade, of finance, and who does what. The biggest impediment that we see that needs to be addressed in terms of policy is how these discussions are very fanciful and nice, but the very policy people who want to do these things, they bring in foreign expatriates to suppress our own domestic labor. So Africa has to look at how to use its own internal labor and rely less on expatriates. That means foreign-born who come there, extract and leave the continent. But then the domestic labor force that leave the universities don't have space in there. The very big contracts on the continent are given to foreigners. Is out of those big contracting mechanisms that people who work in those industries are able to understand the mechanics of the industries and then innovate on it to move forward. So if big road construction contracts, if big port construction contracts, the billion-dollar contracts I want to mean, the one that really takes serious budgets, I know many of them come through bilateral corporations that the funding comes from foreign aid instruments. But then the continent has to find a way to provide through legislation, through other policy instruments, priority to provide its own citizens. If that and with now, but with time I can answer questions and elaborate on more.
Sure. So, Professor Kumba, thank you very much for your very passionate presentation. You highlighted one very important thing about the diaspora. For example, what the Chinese did in bringing the top graduates back home. So this is something that you are recommending, that we can also engage diaspora to work with the tripartite arrangement that we're talking about. And I think that's a very important recommendation going forward. We now turn to our third panelist, Ms. Beatrice Gakuba, Executive Director of Awan Africa. If Beatrice, if you are there and you can begin to unmute your mic, we'll be very happy. I think I can see you. Okay, so Beatrice, kindly unmute your mic for us. Then you also have can see you very clearly, but there's no sound.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you very clearly. So thank you very much, Beatrice. Still keeping to time, 5 minutes as practically as you can. I will sound you out when you're going over. We want to get as many people to speak as possible. So please go ahead. It's 3:23 p.m. We're still session 2, hashtag APSS, hashtag writing biz wrongs on Twitter. Please go ahead with your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Benson, and also all protocol reserved. So I will just go straight to the subject. I want to take up where Professor Kem also left it when he talked about the education system. And to anyone in the public sector is that to remind them that we in the private sector, the education system must re-engineer their thinking on their curriculum to produce what the market needs, especially as we enter into Africa Free Trade Area. So Awan Africa, as you said, you know, everything is on the website, but in a nutshell, it's a women in agribusiness network. We are the largest network on the continent with women and youth in agribusiness. So we have decided to make agriculture a business, and we also intentionally focus on women. And of course, I'm sure all of you know why, because when you look at the women entrepreneur, you know, and the women on the continent, if you go anywhere from north to east to south to west, you see women at the ports, at the border, at the borders, at the markets, is all women, informal women, and yet they are lagging behind in all development indicators, as we can say. So we have 3,000 registered business, small and medium enterprises and large enterprises. You'll be surprised how many women are trending and trading in large businesses and medium businesses. And we also work between 700,000 and 1 million small-scale farmers that we help to graduate from informal to formal businesses. But as I said earlier, we lag behind in everything. Women will have no access to finance. Why? Because they have no access to financial literacy. Name it, they don't have. Some of them don't even know how to receipt, and leave alone to even start dreaming about trading in Africa Free Trade Area, where they cannot even make a difference between, you know, profit and capital or whatever, but they're still trading. And we agree that without empowering economically the women, we will not move the continent. So, as I said on Monday, on when we're organizing our Women Day conference with African Union and FAO, the economic violence is enemy number one to women, because it's institutionalized and it's systemic. So we really have to change the narrative and the mindset. So along those 4 pillars that we have, financial inclusion, market access, we trade, even trading in the local market is a challenge. So how do we now enter the Africa Free Trade Area? But not everything is gloom, because during the pandemic, we ran an impact assessment on COVID on our network. And we found that 90% lost their income. And those who were able to survive, to adapt to digitalization, it was only 4.4% of our entire network, and the 90% of that 4% were under 30. So women are still digitally illiterate, on the continent, in the business. So if we don't address that issue, there will be still exclusion. And when it comes to trade facilitation, what we do, it's going to be very challenging unless we really focus on preparing those women by training to be able to take advantage of the new Africa trade area. On the African area, I want to say that yes, the playing field is large and the opportunities are huge, but inclusion is key. Inclusion of women and youth is key, because our population, the distribution of our population is on youth, and those in small scale enterprise in agriculture, which it's actually they are agriculture takes 80% of our women, and it takes place in the rural area, which is completely depleted when it comes to every other aspect of development. So we have to take into account. And the inclusion is key, and the preparedness also is very essential. How do we prepare our startup? I don't want to come back to the finance and the structures and then whatever of our startup, whether they're young women or young men. The problems are the same. I'm just trying to emphasize here, how do we prepare our youth and our women entrepreneurs to take advantage of the opportunities of Africa Free Trade Area? How do we unpack? They don't even know what are the rules of trade. They can hardly trade on the local market, efficiently. So how do we prepare them and to in terms of knowledge, imparting them with knowledge on the rules of market, rules of trade, etc. We're not even coming back to the finance. During the COVID, the pandemic, we saw a lot of diversification. Needless to say that women are very multitasking, and we have a lot of examples. I think, Mr. Bensa, you said we learned how to make lemonade from lemon. Yes, we do have women across the continent who came out with value additions. In Uganda, we had a member who's holding apple, but because they could not, because of lockdown, they went to the value addition. And then in Namibia, we have a young girl who's in the blue economy. She went from fresh oysters, to smoking the oysters. And in Congo DRC, we have a young girl who was exporting raw coffee, but decided to process coffee and to sell on the local market. Yes, we have those initiatives, but they are few and they are scarce. And I want to say that we really have to focus where we need to focus. We have to be serious if we want to trade in this market. I think the call is for everyone, but my point here is that if we do not include, we are not bold and intentionally include women and youth in this whole trail of transforming our continent, it will not work. My last word is that all of us here, which I comment very well, and you can see all the panels that from day one up to today, we have a lot of knowledge and talents on the continent. But unless we really transform, rethink, re-engineer, and on what we really want on our continent, it will be just a repetition and different semantics of what we have been doing wrong. So my last word is always, I say, the Africa we want must overpower the Africa we don't want. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Beatrice. The Africa we want must overpower the Africa we don't want. Very interesting ending. And belated Happy International Women's Day. Thank you very much for your very important points. I think there's no gainsaying. I think it's very clear to all of us. Already we know how women outnumber men. and the great things that they've always been doing. When you go back to our grandmothers, they had been trading across borders for the longest time, long before even AfCFTA was dreamt of. So AfCFTA has now come. They need to understand, what does it mean practically? What does it mean to them? What's the value addition? What can you do differently? So going back to the point you made about making lemonade from the lemons, this is how, these are the kind of ways you can break down AfCFTA for a new demographic of women and youth. But suffice to say, let's not be too pessimistic. I think what we can say about the African Continental Free Trade Area from conversations that we have all been hearing in different spaces is that one thing that has been very key is that, unlike many other free trade areas that we have heard about, and I think a lot of us have been around long enough to hear about different free trade areas in different parts of the world. With this one, with this African Continental Free Trade Area, almost every time there's something about women, there's something about youth. It may not be fully developed, but at least we are talking about it. So that's a good sign. So let's continue to talk, let's continue to discuss it, let's continue to find ways in which we can unpack it. And you'll be happy to know that the AfCFTA Secretariat is already discussing trying to find a way to have a protocol specifically related to the agreement. Maybe there might be one specifically related to youth, who knows? But at least they're talking about it. So let's continue to have the conversation. Let's continue to unpack the challenges that you have. And so, Beatrice, thank you so very much for your very excellent points. Now, we go to Ms. Teki Barnard, founder and CEO of Shift Impact Africa and the Shared Value Africa Initiative. That title merits a one-line explanation for everybody. So very quickly, please, if you can do that for us and then go into your presentation. Thank you very much, Teki. Let's unmute you. Oh, okay. Yes, please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Emmanuel, and thank you. Hugely honored to be here today and be part of this platform. All protocols observed. So I'm the CEO of the Shared Value Africa Initiative and Shift Impact Africa. But today I wear my Shared Value Africa Initiative hat.
Okay.
The Shared Value Africa Initiative is a Pan-Africa organization, and our purpose is to build Africa's most impactful shared value business network. So we focus on the private sector and we focus on entrepreneurs. Our mandate is to shift leadership mindsets, to change business strategy, to align profit with purpose. We need a new system to reduce the inequalities on our continent. And when we talk about changing business strategy to align profit with we want to align those profits with creating positive social and environmental impact. So the new system that we need is a system that will reduce inequalities on our continent, creating profit with purpose. It's a long-term commitment and not a short-term fix. So the shared value business management concept, for those that are not familiar with it, is a new concept that hails from Harvard Business School. It was created 10 years ago by Professor Michael Porter and Mark Kramer, and we are the regional partners of the Global Shared Value Network with sister networks in India, Australia, Hong Kong, and the USA. We also work with Lagos Business School, we work with Stratford Business School, we work with the Africa Leadership University School of Business, we work with the University of Johannesburg Business School, because we need to get this concept into our executive short courses to prepare our future leaders to focus less on profit and more on purpose. On the AfCFTA and innovation and business diversification, we work, as I said, extensively with private sector and entrepreneurs. And we've seen many innovations to solve local problems. I think if we look at East Africa, it's way ahead with mobile banking and healthcare insurance. So we do have the innovations, but we always start our innovations to solve a local problem. A key point for me today, and hopefully to trigger some innovation as far as the financial services sector is concerned with the AfCFTA, there is an enormous information gap on the AfCFTA with our young businesses and entrepreneurs. I had a quick discussion that I want to share with you 2 weeks ago with an entrepreneur. He's making sweet potato flour in Rwanda. He has an opportunity to export to Kenya and Ethiopia. He needs information at the tip of his fingers that's easily accessible, simple information, such as what are the food standard requirements for Kenya? How do I have to package it and label it? How do I have to transport it? How do we have to handle cross-border payment? Do I now have to go through a middleman that will take half of my profit? Who do I go to? Many real challenges on this information gap. And we as an organization, the Shared Value Africa Initiative, for this reason, have embarked with partners on developing this AfCFTA information app for our SMMEs and MSMEs. We talk about innovation in Africa, Emmanuel. In order to bring innovation to the market, more local funding is needed. We need our own innovation here on our continent. We always tend to look outside of Africa. That's my personal view. However, there's also a lack of involvement of public authorities in the innovation process. Innovation are very often driven by an individual or a small startup looking to solve a local problem. Few countries have a mechanism whereby these innovations can be supported by government services. And due to the lack of systems to identify these innovations, they remain unknown. The innovator has neither the means nor the mandate to bring this new technology or equipment to those who need it most. Still today, government services seem far removed from cutting-edge thinking. Innovation is part of the African culture. We had to innovate due to our circumstances. However, we need to protect our innovations and intellectual property, because if we don't, we will just perpetuate a new form of colonialism. It's time for us as Africans to create our own narrative and own our innovations. So Emmanuel, that's me. And in closing, I just want to say, during this International Women's Week, it is about gender equality in our homes and in our workplace. And Dr. Amy Jadasimi from LADOL, who's also part of the Africa B team, she's from Nigeria, said at the 2019 Africa Shared Value Leadership Summit that it is not going to be possible for Africa or any other continent to achieve sustainability unless we have gender equality. She went on to share that we can increase global GDP by $27 trillion if we have equal parity in the workplace. And that's me, Emmanuel. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Tiki, thank you very much for keeping to time. Thank you also for your very refreshing points. I think one major takeaway presentation was how you mentioned the point you made about East Africa being ahead of the rest of the continent on mobile banking and healthcare insurance. So imagine in a period in which there's a global pandemic and we could have comparative conversations between East Africans and the rest of the continent on how, on best practices of healthcare insurance. How wonderful that would be in the context of the African Continental Free Trade Area. So for those who are taking notes, these are some of the things that we want to take away with. We are in a period in which we talk about global value chains, regional value chains, but we're also talking about best practices. Which continent, which region is doing what better, and how can it be replicated in another region? Going forward, we have one last speaker who has been with us already, but he's going to expatiate on his points. Once again, welcome, Dr. Kospio Gabra, Chairman of the African Business Center for Development Education. And to be fair, kindly tell us what your company is about in one line. I think we've been doing that for others, so I think it's only fair to allow you to do that as well. But you will have 5 minutes after that. Thank you. The floor is yours.
All right, thanks a lot. You can hear me now, right?
Yes,
Emmanuel,
we can hear
thanks
you.
a lot.
Okay.
Well, it's been a great discussion all week, and we keep hearing a lot of very interesting dimensions. Africa Business Center for Developing Education, as its name may imply, it's a non-governmental organization established to promote the collaboration between the private sector and the educational system with the goal of making our younger graduates more employable. It came about due to my earlier experiences, if you like, in the ministries of education in Ghana as minister and subsequently as Minister of Trade and Industry. But I've done a few other things in between, a lot of which have pointed out to me the importance of, because we're talking about innovation, and particularly because innovation in these days, because of the role that information and communication technology plays, and the fact that most innovation tends to involve some electronic and mobile and other technologies, especially for the younger ones, that applications, the creation of apps, as we call them, for example, has been a great area for young people to quickly innovate and solve some of our problems. So many of African problems, if we're talking about technological innovation, we're talking about science and technology, some of them, quite a number of them, can be solved through the use of technology, especially telecommunications. In a previous life, I happened to also have been the Chief Executive Officer of the Commonwealth Telecommunications Organization based in London for 8 years. So in that role, working with the ITU, the International Telecom Union, the Pan-African Telecom Association, Pan-African Telecom Union, Part 2, we had certain opportunities to try to push that agenda. But in my latter years, after establishing Africa Business Center for Developing Education 10 years ago, I've been focusing a lot on mentoring and grooming young people and being part of various partnerships and competitions to identify young people with innovative ideas who can be brought up and encouraged with the financial institutions, with other entrepreneurs that are more mature, to also move up the totem pole. And of course, African Free Trade Area offers an enormous opportunity and fantastic platforms for further growth in that area. But that's why I had to precede my earlier comments with the realities of the fact that Kwame Nkrumah, a major innovator in Africa, had his career cut short for reasons we can't get into today. But that also inevitably then truncated Ghana's own innovation culture and history. I mean, many people, even those listening to us, may not remember that in the 1960s, Ghana was nearly an atomic nuclear power, before even some of the European and Western countries gained atomic energy potential. We had an atomic energy reactor, and that was one of the first institutions closed down by the CIA when they overthrew Kwame Nkrumah in 1966. So it's as if we have never had a history of innovation. We had a history of innovation. We had, textile factories, we had cotton ginning plants, we had glass, production companies, we had motor assemblies, automobile assembly plants, So it's now that we are going back to these same things as if they are novelties to us. Meantime, our science and technological innovation, the university content has been changed and modified, and the University of Science and Technology, for example, now teaches more art students than science students. Well, we have bastardized our agenda, the agenda of Kwame Nkrumah, which was a science and technology-driven agenda for Africa. So we can of course go back to basics, which is what A, B, C, D is about. Let's go back to basics, learn our alphabets, and then try and change our educational system to make it more technology-driven. Let's have some prizes and let's have some awards and let's have some recognition of innovators and technologies. In almost all African countries, there are all kinds of awards for musicians, for artists, for drummers, for politicians, for everybody, but not so much for the science and technology people. Prize of one kind or the other can go to that sector. So there are many, many things I think we can do as a continent if we actually want to drive innovation and technology, so that we are not just consumers of technology, but we are producers of the technology. And we're talking about very, very, very basic things. How many African countries can assemble a tractor? Everybody needs a tractor or other farm equipment for us to advance agriculture. But if we can't even assemble a tractor, simple thing, we might of course want to import cars and sometimes want to assemble cars. And why don't we start with some very simple things that in our agricultural training colleges and our universities and polytechnics, students can study, pass, and actually go and manufacture with teams that I've been also working with various business groups to establish mentorship programs. ABCD itself offers a lot of mentorship programs, but we need businessmen and women, successful businessmen and women, to be able to come together as consortia to support each other. But one of the challenges I faced, even as a Minister for Trade and Industry of Ghana, is I'll call 5 business men and women and say that, look, there's this particular project that we would like you to jointly invest in. They did anything. Nobody wanted to be their own sole proprietor, so that, so if we are not willing to even collaborate in one country, not to mention across countries, in production of goods and services that were profitable, as proposing profitable companies and propositions. I used to work with the International Finance Corporation in Washington, D.C., part of the World Bank Group. So I understand finance and banking. And I'll be telling these people, look, these are opportunities for us Africans. I'm supposed to work with this person or that person, and I can't do it. So our problems are multifaceted. And often, a lot of it goes down to the psychology, the whole psychology of our very essence and our being, and our Pan-Africanist thinking or lack of Pan-Africanist thinking. Most of us, when Nkrumah tried to even bring 4 African countries together, Ghana, Guinea, Mali, we don't share a common border. Some of them were speaking French. But Nkrumah, to prove that we can unite as Africans, he told these 3 countries, come together. He then told Lumumba, all the way down in the central of Africa, come and join us. Lumumba was about to join a Ghana, Guinea, Mali Federation in Nkrumah's time when he was overthrown. Okay, so other African countries went their separate ways. That is okay. We are trying to start from scratch. The African Common Central Bank had been thought about long ago. Various African financial institutions thought about long ago. We are now trying to rebuild and relive some of the history of our fathers and our grandfathers. So, well, let's get on with it. It's not an easy exercise, because there are other countries that don't wish Africa well and which are watching us. And when you want to build a railway line across 6 African countries, I'm involved in a certain project for a certain nature, you find that there are interferences. One country A, country B, they don't tell you why, but they're not interested. Country Y will not be part of a certain committee. I've written to the African Union Commission almost a year ago when the pandemic started, and I told them that African airlines will suffer. African airlines will not be able to move very soon, and they will collapse. So we should get together and do A, B, C, and D. I wrote a whole letter. It was received by a certain officer, but up to now, nobody has responded. I've not received a single response. Now, this is not because they don't know me. I've been to African Union Commission many times. I've served on their panels. I've been part of the group that was supposed to even us of one kind or the other. Ministerial experience. I was even chairman of that. President, when he couldn't attend the high committee on trade meetings. I chaired the meetings of the African High-Level Committee on Trade, leading to the AfCFTA, when my president was not available, or he was even at the AU summit, but busy with security and other political issues that were often more popular with our heads of state. So we have enough to complain about. But yes, I also have a lot of stories to tell, which I'm not choosing to speak about enough anyway, because the mentorship has led to a lot of innovation. I'm currently involved with supporting some 3 young men to bring about an African cross-border payments project. I actually created and promoted a Pan-African Trade Hub system, which was actually launched in Nairobi with the Minister of Trade and Industry at the time and myself in the Kenyatta Conference Center, to be a precursor of certain projects that could allow the AfCFTA to flourish. I'm involved also in a startup company which is on e-commerce platform. So fintech, e-commerce, I'm all over the place. But, well, I'm also aware of what may be the frustrations of the private sector, because I myself have tried to bridge certain gaps, not always too successfully. For example, in Ghana, I've launched and created the annual forum on government, academia, and industry collaboration, called Industry, Government, Academia Collaboration, that one of your panelists was speaking about, or several panelists have spoken about. How do we get our technology institutions to collaborate? There are many discoveries or, well, research findings of our science and technology institutes which are lying on files and gathering dust. As a minister, I went all the way to the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research of Ghana, took off my so-called ministerial hat, and had a meeting in the office of the Director General, who, of course, is below a minister's level. I refused to go through my own colleague minister, who is the Minister for Science and Technology, so that I don't have to deal with bureaucracy. But after that one meeting and a lot of conversation, he didn't have the opportunity to even reciprocate my visit to his office. So he sat in his corner, I sat in my corner. But then I've organized this annual collaboration with the Council on the Ghana Academies of Arts and Sciences. Ghana has an Academy of Arts and Sciences, where all the technologies are supposed to gather and all the innovation should take place. But I'm sorry to say that, as I said earlier, I don't know too many innovations or, what's the right word, inventions that can be credited specifically to Ghana to create our own four-wheel drive, well, a kind of abdomen truck. A right word. Maybe Christian can help me. Mr. Bansa, you can help me with how to describe that truck. There's a wooden truck, type of product, which would have been in cargo vehicle more than 30 years ago. A Ghanaian got together and tried to do that. We also have a Ghanaian who actually has produced vehicles comparable in, at least in look, with any of the Toyota Land Cruisers and Nissan Patrols. That's Apostle Safo of Ghana. That's when I recommended that Apostle Safo should be made a member of the University of Science and Technology Council. And then the University Vice Chancellor retorted to me in the media that the University of Science and Technology is not an institution where students are taught how to make things, but they are only to be taught how things are made. So that concludes my presentation. It shows us the wide gulf, the intellectual gulf, that even when you have intellectuals who should, with due respect, know better, they say, well, this is not his fault. That's how his institution was built. That's how he understands his role. Not to teach any African to make anything. Because the things will be made for you by Europe and America and Japan and everywhere. Your object as an intellectual, as a science and technology student, the University of Science and Technology, is only to know and to learn how things are made. How things are made. But don't learn how to make things. So if we can change that mindset, that's a major mindset change. And it cuts across the board of all Africa. Until we change our minds in all these aspects, we really can't make too much progress. We produce all the documents, all the papers, all the resolutions, we are still in the same place. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Spiyo-Gabra. Thank you very much for the important stories and the reminders, historical and otherwise, about some of the challenges that we have been facing all this time. From Nkrumah's attempts, the Ghana-Guinea Mali Union, and how that fared out, and some of the challenges you have encountered yourself, with your experience, and still, it lies on someone's table gathering dust. So yes, I think what we can pick from there is that we need to help ourselves. And I think on the continent, it is something that we don't want to confront all the time, but we do not help ourselves enough. Everyone wants to take something for themselves in their own corner. We need collaboration. We can't talk about regional value chains and be individualistic in our mindset. I think Dr. Spiyo-Gabra spoke to the issue of changing our mindsets. That is something critical we need to do. In Ghana, we have something we call PhD, pull him down. There's too much of that on the continent. If we need AfCFTA to succeed, we need to stop this pulling him down syndrome. We need to succeed. Everyone has said it. It's public knowledge. So let's just accept it that people would not want to see AfCFTA succeed. So what do? We come together. We see the best practices. What do we do well here? What do we do well there? Come together, and under this tripartite arrangement, private sector, academia, public sector, creating an enabling environment, and then also using it to enhance our regional economic communities. I'm sure that we can make a lot of progress with the African Continental Free Trade Area. That is me off my soapbox for now. Let me now quickly open the floor for 5 minutes for questions, but I'm going to be very, very disciplinary on the 5 minutes because we are eating into session 3. But the questions are just to give you a little bit of time to also take a break so that we can get our session for panel 3 well underway. So if we can have our hands up for those who want to ask their questions, I'll give you only 5 minutes and then we stop and then we enter session 3. So Marceline Dabo, kindly ask your question, 1 minute. Let's make it snappy, please. And then after that, Randolph. So Marceline. Or
Yes.
Marcelin?
Yes, can you hear me? Can you hear me very well?
Yes.
We can hear you.
Yeah, jumbo to everybody. So thank you very much. I am greeting you. I just want to thank you and say that it's very important in this kind of meeting to have practical sessions. We talk too much inside Africa, and the young generation doesn't need that. We don't need the professors here to come to make history, etc., honorable ministers, etc., etc. We don't need that today. We know that some of them, not all of them, are good, okay? Because some are in mediocrity day and night. What I want to say is that if you talk about innovation today, normally in this session, we should have people of African Organization of Intellectual Property in this room who can present how to proceed to make the innovation to protect your invention, okay? We need also to have in this room entrepreneurs who can talk also about how they want to a practical realization. And third point is what is very important. We should have also in this room people who can make business to business. For example, you are doing solar energy. You come here, you present your solar energy. So Africa, when are you going to stop talking and go for practical actions? This is what the youth of Africa need. We don't need people who are running inside their great cars, etc., and talk from the morning to the evening with that great titles of professors of this, of that. We don't need. What we need, because Africa, I finish, sir, I finish. Last sentence. Okay. I finish, please. Africa will not be developed only by meetings and publishing papers. It is false. That is really false. Thank you very much, and I hope the mindset will change. Thank you.
And may I beg your indulgence, Randolph, Janine, Lepino, kindly submit your questions in the chat area. We will make sure that we read them. We need to get to our next panel because some of them need to go, different places. We are in different time zones, so they need to make their presentations. So kindly put them in the chat box, and we'll make sure we read them. So let's quickly then move to the last session, panel panel number 3, and we're going to be speaking to our esteemed panelists. We have about 5 of them. The session is on SMEs and women at the innovation frontiers. So our panelists for this final session, Mr. Ian Sayers, who is the Senior Advisor, Access to Finance for MSMEs, International Trade Center. Mr. Ian Sayers, if you are around and you can kindly unmute your mic for us, kindly do so. And then kindly prepare yourself to give us just 1 minute of what the International Trade Center is, is doing and has been doing to contribute to the whole conversation on the African Continental Free Trade Area.
Thank you, Emmanuel. That's very kind of you. Look, I would love to do that, but actually, especially in view of the previous comment that we just had, could I suggest that we invite Gladys Towena to speak before me, because I think it would be a really good moment to hear about her experiences with her own, with development of her own enterprises in Benin. If that's okay with you. I think it would really help the flow, and then we can focus on something really practical and tangible.
Okay, I think that's doable. So Gladys Tawema, CEO of Caritic Benin, if you can do that for us, just tell us what your company is about, and then the practical things that you've been able to do in about 5 minutes. Please go ahead, and then after that we'll go to Mr. Ian Sayers.
And the type of challenges that she's faced on her journey, that would be really great to hear. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much for that suggestion. So Gladys, you have the floor. Kindly unmute. Okay. Kindly unmute your mic. Looks that the line is quite bad. Yes, your video.
Yeah.
Gladys, if
is
you
it
can
okay now?
Yes, I think it's flowing. If you can, please turn off your video. I think that will help with the bandwidth. Yes. Oh, if you can reposition yourself, that would also help. Hello?
Yes. Hello?
Yes, Gladys.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, but please please turn off the video.
I did.
Okay. So that's great, but reposition yourself a little. I think that will help you.
Is it better now? No.
Hey, no. The line, the line is still breaking a little. Maybe another part of the room may help.
I'm wondering in the room.
Okay. Then Ian, as she tries to sort herself out, may we invite you to, make your presentation?
Okay,
I think that will help us.
Thank you, Chairman. That's very kind of you again. And yes, thank you very much. So look, for those of our audience who don't know the International Trade Center, we are the UN agency that's responsible for supporting sustainable trade and enterprise development, but with a particular focus on women and young entrepreneurs and what we refer to as internationalizing SMEs. And I head up ITC's Access to Finance practice, and my colleague David Cordobez, who will be joining us later on in this part of in this session, is responsible for ITC's youth empowerment program and youth and trade programs. So look, between us, we have quite a few years of experience of working with startups and with young enterprises in Africa. And I have to say, I've been listening this afternoon to the previous two sessions, and there's a lot of great ideas about what we can aspire to coming out there. We know from our experience that Africa is blessed with many young, creative spirits that are working their way into the economy, some out of necessity, some out of a real need to do something for the continent. And I think it's time to consider some more practical issues that they face and what we can do about them. So this was my starting point. It's a pity we couldn't hear in Gladys's story first, but look, the way we look at this is really, if you consider what we call the three stages of innovation, or if you take an entrepreneur that has an idea, you know, the first stage is really usually trying to do some research, do some design, test whatever it is, whether it's a product or a service, and then try to perfect it in some way. And the big challenge here is whilst you're doing all that, how do you eat? You know, how do you get basically some money to do things, or even to buy stuff that you need, or do the testing, or use a lab, or whatever you have to do? How do you actually do that? And there are several things you can turn to. You've got maybe some incubators. You might be perfecting your innovation, or you may have some innovation, some philanthropic friends that can support you in that process. But look, in our experience, there's just not enough good incubators to go around. We work with quite a few in East Africa and some in West Africa, also even in Ghana. But there's really just not enough to go around for the large number of creative, innovative new enterprises that we see in the continent. Now, the second point is when you're getting from that innovation stage and you're trying to get to market with what we call a repeatable product, or service, and you're trying to do that quicker than somebody else does. Now, there's been a lot of talk about intellectual property rules and how they can be applied, or how difficult it is to get the certificates and actually defend them. In actual fact, these days, even for very big companies, the name of the game is all about how you can get to market quickest and build up your market share so that nobody else really stands a chance of getting in and undermining you or stealing your product before everybody knows about it. So in this area, once you get to that stage, you have something that you can sell, a product or service, then you're looking for a different type of capital. You're looking for you're looking for mentors, for an accelerator kind of program. So whilst you're developing your idea in stage one, you need an incubator or some help there. Whilst you're actually trying to get it to market quickly, it's all about accelerating your business and growing your business. And so ideally you can find some money, but also some money coming from people who can mentor you in that process, because it is difficult. You're going from a single person operation and suddenly you need a team. All right. And then this is usually where most enterprises fail, by the way. Now we get to the third stage where your innovation, you've got past actually getting it to market. You're starting to make regular sales and to see demand. And now things are looking up. Well, you suddenly have to learn how to manage a business and manage a staff, do reporting, do accounting, traveling to all sorts of places. At the same time, you're trying to ensure that whatever you're actually making or selling is still the right quality, and the operational side is still profitable, and that all the transactions work. Problems, massive challenges, I should say, across the African continent. Now, one of the main areas of challenges here is not so much in the capital financing at that stage, because once you've got a product or service which has stabilized in the market, you can usually get some kind of loans or investment capital from somebody. The big problems, the big challenges are all about cross-border sales. And Tiki Barnard, she referred to that when she was saying, how do you get paid? And this is a very realistic challenge. Now in West Africa, you have two monetary unions already. Western Central Africa, you have the CFT West Africa, you have the CFT Central Africa. And then in Southern Africa, you've got this loose coalition of countries around the South African Rand. But everywhere else, even normal e-payment or e-commerce arrangements are looking to go across the frontier with countries that don't necessarily have readily convertible currencies, or where the banks are not necessarily having direct, what we call correspondence relations with each other. That pushes up prices, it delays the transaction process, and that opens up currency fluctuation risks, which can sink a new business or an innovation. So where I'm coming from with my access to financing hat on is really to find ways, practical ways that we can, things we can do to solve these issues. And whilst moving to an afro, be that a digital afro currency or a paper-based one, I can see that's going to take a while. We really need a solution for now that's going to help COVID recovery. Now, in ITC, we're addressing those challenges in 3 or 4 ways. And I'd just like to finish by just giving you a few words about what we're doing there and the timeline that we're following. But this is not so much I'm trying to promote what we're doing, although that's very nice. It's also about just giving our audience ideas about some of the things that you need to look at. So probably the best way to think of this is to consider the supply chain across borders and look at the difference between the moment when an exporter processor of whatever size has to buy in inputs for his business or her business, be they from a farmer's or whatever, they have to buy in some inputs. They can invoice a buyer, and then the buyer takes a while to pay them. So they have a huge exposure there. And if your cross-border financing transactions are not working well, that exposure can be extended to 10 or 15 days more than it has to be, just because the transaction process of moving money just takes too long between one bank and another. So this is something we're trying to improve, because it's another area that totally impedes the growth of businesses. Because if you can't get financing upstream in a business, then there's no way that that business can afford to buy in the export quality produce or the export quality inputs consistently, and then sell them across border and actually build up its business, increase it in size. So look, there's 4 areas we're working in. And they're also innovative, I have to say. One area is what we call short-term financing guarantees. And we're looking at that with banks and donors in Africa for supporting, on one level, community financing providers so that they can dramatically cut the cost of interest and the need for collateral to start up entrepreneurs and community enterprises. At the next level, we're looking at SME exporters and how they can get guarantees, how we can provide guarantees through development financing institutions that allow the tier 2 and tier 3 banks that those exporters work with to reduce the cost of the short-term interest rates and also reduce their collateral requirements. And our target is to get the figure below 10%. We're also building in development some new information platforms that allow MSMEs to see at no cost all of the financing and business development advisory services that are available to them. This platform is called the Financing Gateway, and that's going to be available very soon in a number of countries in East Africa, first of all. And we've been testing some innovative e-commerce payment channels for cross-border e-commerce, B2B and B2C. So look, a lot of these innovations are going to be rolling out soon, and we'll be very pleased to inform people about them. But I come back to my initial idea there, that the way we've gone about developing these new approaches is really to unpick the supply chain and look at all the transactions along it to see where things can be improved or can be changed, even if it's just a little bit. You know, it's a bit like saying all over the last year, enterprise defaults have risen to 3%, but sorry, have risen to 30%. But actually that's not the case. Long-term loans, defaults have been rising to 30%, but short-term loan defaults, trade-related financing, still remain at 2 or 3% maximum, or less. So I'm trying to more specific approach along the supply chain to really see what we can do in practical terms that every day will improve the foundations to stimulate more innovative activities to actually get to the stage of being stable businesses. Thank you.
Hello, thank you very much, Ian, for your presentation. I just wanted to find out whether maybe you can speak to the issues that Gladys was trying to speak to. Given her bad connection, maybe you could just offer us a quick rundown of some of the things that you know she was coming to talk about. I think that would help us save time.
All right. Okay. I'm not sure I'm so comfortable to do that. I've spent the last 48 hours in a conference with the Pacific, so I'm slightly jet-lagged without having the benefit of pass through an airport. Okay. But look, I believe Gladys is involved in a really nice program called the African Women Entrepreneur Program, which is designed to do a lot of the things that I was talking about, if I've understood it correctly. And one of the other points I was trying to make there is really that our business development support services, like these programs, especially those where women can turn to for advice from other women who have followed this pathway. You know, these kind of business development support services are essential to get things going. And especially in the languages that people understand, literally the languages they understand and in the culture they understand. So the more we can do, and we have a lot of projects where we're trying to reinforce what we call these local business development support services. I think the more we can do across Africa to build up these services, build up that outreach, the better. And there's one point to take into account right now on that, and I hope Gladys will agree with me on it, is that when these services work with bigger enterprises, they can charge a fee that covers their expenses at least. When they work with very small enterprises, they really rely on either project funding, I think like Gladys does, or contributions from philanthropists or donors, private or public, or government agency support or something like that. But it's very difficult for them to manage their finances and for their own operation to be sustainable. So we need to think how we can sustain these support services, which are essential for bringing on entrepreneurs and innovation.
Hello? Hello, Ian?
Yes, I'm here. Did you hear me?
Yes, I think you are wrapping up. The line just went off.
Okay, all right. Yes, no, I was just saying that I would put out a call, if you like, to your audience to support or to encourage the support of the type of business development services that Gladys is leading there, so that they can actually expand their operations. Because at the end of the day, we're really looking at what you can do upstream in a supply chain that's going to increase the overall capacity and the ability of conditioners, processors, assembly businesses, or even, you know, IT programming hubs. You know, they're all outsourcing work upstream, if you like, to other people and other suppliers. So we need to make sure that the upstream part of the business gets as much attention as the people in the middle and the actual exporters. Otherwise, you don't have enough export quality stuff to actually create an economic impact.
Okay, thank you very much for trying to merge two presentations in one. I'm sure we can get back to Gladys at a later stage, but thank you very much for trying to unpack that. I think it's important for us to know exactly what the ITC is doing and how it is practically supporting women to help enter the Continental Free Trade Area market. So that's very good news, and we hope to be working and speaking with you in subsequent spaces. So I think we can now quickly move over to Ms. Joyce Opoku Mabua, Vice President of Wealth Masters Group. If you are around, kindly begin to unmute your mic, please. Joyce.
Hi.
Yes. And yes, and so Joyce, if you can kindly give us one liner, that would also help.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. Wealth Masters Group is a business advisory consultancy firm. It builds the capacity and efficiency of private and governmental organizations, including individuals, so they can capitalize on their potential. Wealth Masters Group, we have change makers and taps and existing organizations. Those who are in existence, we help them to be agile. Wealth Masters Group has presence in the United Kingdom, in Europe, USA, Ghana, Malawi, Nigeria, Zimbabwe, and Zambia. So Wealth Masters Group also believe in Africa by Africans. And we believe that we can visit our website at wealthmastersgroup.com or send us email at info@wealthmastersgroup.com. Thank you. Yeah. So in a pandemic and looking at a post-COVID era, we can't expect anything less than being innovative with the way we produce, we process, and render services in an efficient manner. And we are talking about SMEs, women, youth as innovation frontiers. And in a continent where we mostly operate at the primary sector, with most raw materials exported in its raw state, a continent where 50% of the population are young and below the age of 25 years, a continent where informal trade or SMEs account for a greater percentage of businesses. For instance, in Ghana, over 90% of SMEs, businesses are SMEs. And I think in Kenya, about 80% of the working population belong to that group. In Nigeria, we have about 50% of such in industrial jobs and 90% of that in manufacturing. Then in a continent where women represent about 70% of the informal cross-border trade, and the population of women exceeds 50%, then being innovative is a lifeline to a deadline for the continent's trading blocks. In other words, I'll say our survival and development as a continent depends on the way we implement new ideas, we create more effective processes, we improve our services, and we create dynamic products. So the SMEs, the women and youth innovators, are the forefront of changing the way we do businesses in Africa. And then in trying to put this whole thing in context, because we seek to right the wrongs of doing business in Africa, then it's imperative that we get to know and understand where we are or where we were before we know where we ought to. A few statistics, I think a research conducted by McPain indicated that closer to 90 to 95% of innovations in Africa fail. And there is a research also by World Bank which shows that the mortality rate of SMEs among African countries remain very high, with 5 out of 7 new businesses failing in the first year. So the question is, what has been the problem? Why these failed? And then I think in the past few days, and then our earlier speakers have talked about the problem that we have faced on the continent: mindset change, financial constraints, knowledge gaps, risk aversion, depth of market information, Some of these have been problems that we have faced. But then what can we do about it? I'm talking about a long-term solution. Some of these solutions in Ghana, for instance, we have some of the initiatives, some of the hubs, some of the development centers. I think Dr. Spiogabra mentioned some of them. But we are thinking Africa. So the onus lies on both the innovators, our government, and all other people. So at the forefront, what do we ask? One of the things we could do would be to enhance the rate of success of innovation. So if they fail, what happens? Do we solve real problems? So innovations are supposed to solve real problems. If they don't, then we need to have a rethink or to take a second look at it. The timelines where we release our products, the pricing mechanisms, the quality and finishing of the products we have. Sometimes you go to the market and then you find two products. The finishing of one will simply turn you off. So if it's an innovation, somebody needs patronage, then you not even go into it, let alone patronize it. These are some of the things that depend on the innovator and has to be taken care of. Then we have the issue of the mindset. We have gender stereotyping. There are some that perceive certain activities as a preserve of men. And then we also have to develop tastes for local content. In Ghana, we have this Kantanka automobile. If government could make it that if all procurement of government vehicles, maybe about 50% or 60% could be from such, then you are empowering this man. I think Dr. Spiogabra mentioned his name, one Apostle Kujostafo. These are things that we have to do to be able to support our own. Then talking about education, I'm thinking about the long-term solution. In a continent where the population growth is 2.7%, then we have to start doing it right from the beginning. AfCFTA came into effect 1st of January. So this is just the beginning. When we talk about the education sector, we can talk about the school curriculum. It should encourage creative and innovative ideas right from primary school to the tertiary institutions. And this should be preferred over the rote learning that we inherited from our colonial masters. I think Dr. Spiogabra also mentioned that one lecturer said at the university, you learn how things are made and not how we make things. And that is part of the rote learning. We have to change this mentality. And in our school curriculum, we have to encourage this. And then with the career and counseling guidance in school, they should be strengthened. If they are strengthened and promoted, they'll be able to unearth talents of individuals at very early ages for development. Then graduates from academic institutions should be able to meet the needs of industry. There is a disconnect between industry and academia, but there should be the link. They should speak together so that at the end of the day, the graduates that are churned out are able to meet industry needs. Then there's also the perception about vocational / technical institutions. The status should be elevated. Most people think that when you go to the vocational or technical institution, you are a dropout or a failure. So if we enhance or we elevate the status, then we are in effect encouraging individuals to go more into vocational / technical institutions so that they will improve upon the skills and add talent to be able to move the agenda forward. Then we have training and business development or research centers for SMEs, youth, and women. We have some of these facilities. Some of them, we are talking Africa, and in some countries have such business development centers. And then those that are in existence, they have to be well resourced so that they'll be able to do what is expected of them. Then we also have the internship at the universities, maybe let's say level 200. Students could have internship right from that stage because level 200, you have gained grounds, found your feet, and know what you are doing. So if you start doing internship at that stage, then you'll be learning practically what goes on in school, at the workplaces, so that sometimes you look for a job and they tell you that we need people with experience. But if we all need people with experience, how will our new ones, the graduates, get the experience to move forward? ICT education should also be introduced at an early stage. In Ghana, this is happening, and I hope in other African countries this will continue. Then information technology, there should be more reliance on technological means and processes of doing business. Online virtual meetings, mobile banking, and stuff. And relying on IT, we are having a virtual meeting. Ideally, you would travel from one place to the other, but this has been made possible because of technology. Then the media, one thing that we need to do is, we should have strong media presence to enhance the image of the continent and after. You are what you know. When you go, BBC and the other media channels, they broadcast what they are interested in. As a continent, what are we interested in? So it's important that we have strong media presence to enhance the image of the continent and what we seek to do. AfCFTA has the Vision Challenge for financial support. And those who do not know, they are willing to help startups. So startups in various areas, technology, health, education, manufacturing, can apply the AfCFTA Vision Challenge. You can Google, find the AfCFTA Vision Challenge, and then you can get support. Then government should also fund innovations. There should be favorable micro and macroeconomic conditions, tax exemption for SMEs, for youth, for women initiatives. And then there should be a deliberate attempt by government through policies to promote the purchase of innovative products for SMEs, women, and youth. And then there could also be the women and youth innovation to encourage women and youth to go into innovative ideas and come up with products. Thank you.
All right. So Joyce, thank you very much, Joyce Opokuma of Wealth Masters Group, for your presentation. Very enlightening points there as well. Let's quickly go over to Emmanuel, Data Capital International. If you are there, yes, we can see you. Kindly unmute your mic, and then let's proceed to have your presentation, please.
All right, thank you very much. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Thanks a lot. All right, so let me first of all congratulate the organizers and all the presenters and the high-profile people who have made contributions to this very, very important subject matter. I think a lot of issues have been already said, and what I just want to do is to attempt to respond to some of the key questions that we have been looking at, and I want to focus on just 3 of them. And I must say that I think listening to the Honorable, my former Minister, Gabra, and all of that, I think a lot of the issues have been addressed. But the first thing I want to address is the issue of what the question says: what national and continental institutions can establish to harness the innovative space. I think from where I sit, one of the key things we need to look at is what I call the policies that can promote and protect intellectual property rights of innovators. Now, Africans would have to be given the deep assurance that once we are able to innovate, the intellectual property right would have to stay with the owners of the innovators. If that does not happen, idea generation and these things that will lead to innovation is not going to thrive in Africa. So that's a very, very key point. The second point I also want to add, which already have a lot of speakers have been alluded to, is innovation funding. How do we ensure that young people and students at the tertiary level who have ideas and they want to really go into innovation can be supported? If funding is not made available, it's just not going to help people be able to be innovative as much as we want. The third point I want to make also is that now if you look at Africa, Africa is largely, if you look at most of the things that really drive us as far as our business is concerned, agribusiness is very, very important. I mean, recently in our company, Human Capital International, collaborated with the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, and we hosted a summit which was on agribusiness, digital innovation, and within the African Continental Free Trade Area. Now, a lot of the things that came up during the discussion was that Africa needs to be intentional if we want in on the continent. If we don't, we're going to have so many people talking about innovation, but the question is, where are we driving the agenda? So being intentional about our innovation policies and programs is very, very key. The second question I also want to look at is academia and research institutions and how they can support research and innovation under the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. And here I want to again align with some of the comments that have already been made. It is very, very important that we move away from the education of what to and rather focus on how to. It's very sad that if you listen to what the Honorable Spogabra said, to have a vice chancellor who would say that our educational system is not focusing on helping our tertiary students to think about how, but rather to look at what they can, but this is the challenge. If we are going to create a culture that will promote innovation, we are going to have to look at the fundamental issues that govern our educational system as far as Africa is concerned. For example, and if you permit me, now if you go to most of our tertiary institutions, even who becomes a vice chancellor, to a very large extent, sometimes becomes a political issue, not as a result of competence, not as a result of vision, not as a result of leadership, but who is in that position to recommend you or to support you. So the idea of shifting away from what to how to is key. Then we must also look at teaching should be in a way that connects learning to problem solving. This idea of numeracy is good, but how do we connect the things that are taught in class to relate to the problems in our communities, to the problems in the country, at the continent, so that, for example, when students are required to do some sort of thesis or whatever, not just things that are going to end up in the shelves, but these are problem solutions that can help us to advance the continent as far as innovation is concerned. So academia and research institutions are critical. So therefore, deliberate efforts to be made to develop homegrown key. If you go to most of our tertiary, MBA classes in Africa, a lot of the case studies, for example, that are used are case studies that are written by professors in Europe, in America, and what have you. It's as if in Africa, we don't have a clear story to tell as far as entrepreneurship and SME development is concerned. I think that this is the time, if we are talking about innovation, for us to focus on how do we, for example, create our own, case studies to spur growth as far as SME development is concerned. Finally, and I want to restrict myself to the time allocated to me. The third question that has been asked is, how can we promote and develop a culture of innovation? And I think this is very, very important. Now, from where I sit and in my years of working with young people and in SMEs, I think to answer this question, one of the key questions we must ask ourselves is what sort of mindset, and this issue of mindset have been mentioned several times throughout this month, throughout this week. What sort of mindset should our youth develop in order to enable them to become innovative and therefore acceptable in the new market frontier that we are talking about? And I want to mention quite a few of them just in conclusion. Number one is that we must ensure that culturally, educationally, even at the family level, we must encourage entrepreneurial spirit development in our young people. Let's help our people to become creative, and curiosity, we must promote curiosity amongst our young people. That means that in our cultural setting, we must allow our kids to be themselves. Gone are the days when father will say, I want you to do what I couldn't do. That aspect we need to let it go. Otherwise, we're not going to go anywhere as far as the continent is concerned. So developing and encouraging entrepreneurial spirit is key among the youth. Number two, the courage to generate and believe in our own ideas is extremely important. Yes, if you don't try it and fail in it, you will never get the experience. So helping people or linking our educational system and our cultural institutions to make, our culture to make sure that generation among the young people is key. Then number 3 is integrity. Yesterday, I think one of the key speakers who was talking about integrity, the fact that if you are in the diaspora and you want people to partner with you and do business, the cost of doing that business becomes quadrupled. Why? Because the local people do not commit to certain value systems that promote entrepreneurship development. So integrity, that is commitment to doing what we agree to do, is extremely important. And if we cannot promote that mindset among our young people who are going to be the drivers of the Africa Continental Free Trade Policy trademark, then nothing is going to happen. The next thing is personal leadership, the ability to help young people to think long term. If we are going to continue with this short-term thinking of wanting to make money now, and now, we're not going to go anywhere. So for me, as far as innovating amongst the young people and creating a culture that will help them to become innovative, personal leadership is very, very important. And finally, we've talked about the fact that, and if you listen to some of the issues that have been raised, Africans have a problem together as a people. Now, we cannot promote partnership amongst Africans if we don't help our young people to appreciate team building, teamwork at the fundamentals, at the fundamentals. So in conclusion, all I want to say is that this is a great conference, this is a great gathering, but a lot cannot be done if we keep talking until we go to the fundamentals and ensure that the practical concerns are addressed. So that's the conclusion that I want to make, and thank you very much for having me. And as you mentioned, we'll be on standby.
Mr. Manodechimi, thank you very, very, very much for your important points. You are the second person to mention integrity, and we want to carry this message of integrity forward in this conversation. We so very much need this as we look forward to how we're going to unpack AfCFTA and make it more equitable as well. So thank you once again for reminding us about that. Now, we need to get back to AE Trade Group. Mr. Suyoma from AE Trade Group, if you can kindly give us 2 minutes. There was not enough time, and he just needs 2 minutes to complete that session. So if he's around, if we can kindly have you back, Mr. Suyum, Mulalem Suyum, if you are there, we'd be very happy to have you complete your 2 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Convener.
Okay, thank you. So please go ahead.
Yeah, and the point of the two colleagues in the panel, Beatrice and Teki, has mentioned a number of elements that we actually currently operating and delivering. One of them is changing the mindset. Changing the mindset to be competitive, changing the mindset aligning with their business plan is a key. So in our core of service that we offer is the training material for small and medium entrepreneurs that is changing the mindset to be competitive. And earlier also Marcelo Ndabo was mentioning that support for the youth. And we do have support for the youth, Marceline, on your question, that we didn't get the opportunity to go to the detail what we offer. But what we do primarily for the youth is in the digital economy to be part of our future generation and current generation to be part of in the digital economy, that we offer in our cloud computing infrastructure the full-fledged of applications to develop. A full-fledged of application that you can be able to develop, starting as a hobby from a high school graduate all the way a PhD research. They can be able to have a developmental environment. And once it is developed and it's matured, and we can be able to test it in our laboratory, and also advising you and consulting you, ensuring that your intellectual property. So this is the future of the youth support that we bring from conception moving forward to application development and production. In this event, I would like also to announce that, as you all may know, that there is a Continental Intra-Africa Trade Fair in Rwanda this year. We are sponsoring 150 youth, and 150 youth, women and men, that could be able to come, and you need to compete, you need to submit on the youth competition in our website platform, atradegroup.com/youth. You will find it in the chat room, our site. That is one. The second one is digital inclusion. In the digital inclusion, we are manufacturing a solar laptop manufacturing where remote area can be accessible. That does not require electricity. That does not require local internet connections. It can connect to the satellite. That is for the digital inclusion. That also facilitates the number of challenges in the border and remote area for trade facilitation, custom clearance for government. The third one is on the financial inclusion. We do have a smart financing approach where we could be able to work with our strategic partners on the multilateral financial institutions we offer. And finally, for Beatrice, for the agriculture woman, as part of the Women's Day, before yesterday, we announced 10,000 women we are sponsoring to use the e-commerce platform for the whole year that we are sponsoring for 10,000 women. So that is also one of the service that we are offering. So Kuku Africa is one of the continental e-commerce marketplace where everyone become part of it. And we are sponsoring 10,000 women for the whole year to use that. Beside all that, for Tiki, that she has also mentioned the capacity building. As part of the capacity building, we offer for small and medium entrepreneurs in the continent that we to create 600,000 small and medium enterprises in the next 4 years. 22 million jobs that will intern in that job. And we are here to assist small and medium entrepreneurs in the number of areas. Unfortunately, because of the timing, that we couldn't unleash all the product and services that we offer. But we encourage you to go and see the website, the atradegroup.com, that the Research and Innovation Center that we offer to collaborate and work with academia, the Learning Center that we offer, changing the mindset, and a number of various different services and product. You will be able to find it in the website. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Suyoma, for those very important points. If we can kindly tell us what is the age limit for the competition? I think a lot of people are asking that. If you can kindly indicate that to us very quickly.
Yes, I am just putting the website up here. Our questions are there, but between 18 to 35 businesses can participate.
Okay, between 18 to 35. Okay, thank you very much. We wish you a great evening. All right, so we can now move on to Mr. Richard Ngatia, Chairman of the Great Lakes Region Private Sector Forum, also one of the organizers of the APSS. You're still with us. Last session, Africa Private Sector Summit, hashtag APSS, hashtag Righting BIZ Wrongs on Twitter. For those who missed the conversation today, you can go to Twitter, use that hashtag, hashtag APSS, hashtag Righting BIZ Wrongs, and follow the conversation throughout the day on the presenters, their key points, the salient ones, etc., etc. And you can do that also. Follow the thread for the past 3 days as well. Live tweeting unit will be doing that for tomorrow as well, making sure that we wrap up with a bang. So thank you once again to our powerful trio for the live tweeting. Now, if you are ready, Mr. Richard Ngatia.
Yes,
We'd
I am.
like you to. Okay, so please go ahead.
Good afternoon, fellow panelists. Sorry. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much, moderator Mr. Emmanuel Bensa from the African Continental Free Trade Area Policy Network for the introduction. And we are very proud to be part of the organizers of this event. So it is great honor to address you today in my capacity as the chair of the Great Lakes Region Private Sector Forum. The forum represents, coordinates, and supports the private sector in the Great Lakes region, constituting African states with a view to maximize the potential of the private sector in driving economic development for the stability of the region. So I am also the president of the Kenya National Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Africa's innovation since is booming, driven largely by improved expertise, skills, and advancements in technology. We continue to embrace innovation to create jobs, improve livelihoods, and find solutions to socio-economic challenges. So e-commerce has particularly gained prominence as a safer and convenient trade option during the COVID-19 pandemic, when ease of movement of goods and services and cross-border trade has been adversely affected. So this has been facilitated by the development of the digital and fintech sector in Africa. And therefore, the Great Lakes region has immensely benefited from fintech services such as M-Pesa. And it is good to let you know that M-Pesa, driven by Safaricom, contributes about 6% of Kenya's GDP, generating about $655 million in 2020. And Safaricom, the main fintech product, which is known as M-Pesa, is attributed to the impact generated by the Kenyan companies as well. We also have other applications like Jambo Pay, eMali Pay, Paystack, and Jumia, among others. And our young entrepreneurs and the youth are really energetic and very innovative, and so they're busy innovating new products for the market. So the economic impact of the COVID-19 pandemic is strongly felt by the SMEs, whose financial fragility threatens their extraction during this period. According to the World Bank, 7 out of every 10 jobs in emerging markets are created by SMEs, making them a key player in employment and enterprise development, thus forming a major source of employment and livelihood as well for millions of people. So innovation comes in as a timely solution to support sustainability of SMEs during these unprecedented times of the pandemic in order to ensure their continued job creation and value addition to society. So incentives must be provided for SMEs to invest in digital solutions and to enable them fully participate in e-commerce under the African Continental Free Trade Area. And this could be made possible by enabling access to digital infrastructure, lowering the tariffs on digital products and custom duties to lower the cost on doing business. For instance, in Kenya, the Kenya National Chamber of Commerce and Industry, where I serve as the president, is in partnership with a development partner, namely MasterCard Foundation, where we are implementing the MSME's COVID-19 Recovery Resilience Program. And through this program, MSMEs have benefited from approximately $6 million funding which assistance to the MSMEs to ensure business continuity and sustainability. And also very important is, and in partnership with Equity Bank Kenya, SMEs have benefited from a credit facility of $200 million to support SME post-COVID business recovery. It's an ongoing process and ongoing program. We have been able to capacity build and also to educate the MSMEs on financial literacy, bookkeeping, and to prepare them for markets as well, and also making sure that now they can be ready to access credit. So SMEs should be well equipped and capacitated to understand the digital environment of doing business. There is need to train SMEs on the intellectual property rights, like has been alluded by one of our panelists, and management of digital trading platforms, electronic contracts, consumer protection laws, taxation, cybersecurity, and data protection as well. So in order to facilitate trade of SMEs in e-commerce, there is need to ensure access and security of digital payment systems that will lower the cost of digital transactions. And with the advent of the African Continental Free Trade Area, it is time for African states to develop domestic ICT export sectors to encourage innovation and export of their digital services. So innovation and technology provides opportunity to accelerate the achievement of the SDG number 5 on gender equality and the empowerment of women and also girls who are currently limited for access. So barriers contributing to such low internet use among African women include lack of affordability, low digital literacy, and low confidence and lack of relevant content. So application and services that suit the preferences of women who are less likely than men to own mobile phones and access the internet regularly. So apparently, they constitute nearly half of all MSMEs compared to male-owned MSMEs, and their businesses face more severe legal, regulatory, and administrative barriers. So first step to bridge this technology gap is to give women equal opportunity in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics by encouraging girls to pursue them. And in this regard, women should be equipped with the necessary digital skills required to adapt to the new normal of conducting business under the pandemic. So this really should include capacity building to understand and participate in the innovation opportunities available under the AfCFTA, which will in turn place the business in global map and increase the market price as well and niche. So with this sentiment, I personally and strongly appeal for an enabling environment for women and SMEs to expand their innovative potential, and this will elevate our beloved continent to greater milestones in job creation and poverty alleviation, leading us to the Africa we all want and deserve. And therefore, in conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, I wish to emphasize the importance of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement in providing the perfect platform for African business to transform the continent through emerging opportunities in digital innovation. So I really want to thank you for giving me the audience, and I want also to thank the other panelists who had rich information that will help us move forward. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, sir, for keeping to time. We have, I'm sure all of you are very tired, but we thank you very much for continuing to stay on. We are almost through. We just have one last speaker, then we'll have a few minutes for questions, and then we'll call it a day. Finally, Mr. David Cordobes, thank you very much for being very patient and holding on. You are with the Youth and Trade Program. You are Youth and Trade Program Manager of the International Trade Center. I think by now we have heard, we know a little bit more about the International Trade Center. So we're very happy to have you. So kindly give us your presentation and we'll open the floor very quickly to questions. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and of the audience. And I hope I'll keep the audience active and interested after this short presentation. I'll get to the point. It's very amazing to see how youth is coming up in the agenda of many forums and get invited in discussions around the trade agreement, and particularly this one, which is very important, the AfCFTA. Since the youth program has been created at the International Trade Center, it's been like 5 years ago. I mean, I remember joining ITC and youth. Yeah, we worked with youth, but we're not necessarily taking them into account as a specific audience and as a specific program. And now we see that being raised in many discussions. So I'm very glad to see that the youth as a space, and we take into account youth voices. Regarding the program in itself, the way we work, and this is very interesting because we are a trade-related organization. Trade is all around in ITC, and we were created to make trade happen in many countries and to support trade. And when we talk about trade, we talk about mainly as MSMEs, and we talk about how to be competitive and to be integrated in value chains and to be competitive in international markets. And there's one thing that is very important is skills. Access to skills. If you want to grow, if you want to be competitive, you need to find the right skills to do so. And there's a shift regarding the perception of youth. I mean, the figures and the scary scenarios regarding youth in the future and being unemployed. Youth are an opportunity. Youth are the solution to many problems of competitiveness, and particularly with MSMEs. And what we can say is that policymakers did the job. They delivered on a trade agreement. The AfCFTA is a major milestone for the African trade environment. But now, how do we make it happen? And how do we trickle down this trade agreement? And how do we make it palatable for the younger generation and the younger innovators that are very numerous in the continent? And just before this session, I received an article from our talented team in the Information Center of ITC about 4,000 interviews that were conducted among young African in the past months, in between 18 to 24 years, and about their wishes and aspiration for the future. And surprise, surprise, entrepreneurship innovation comes as number 4 of the most important element that they see in the future for Africa. And what's also very interesting is 76% of them want to start a business in the next 5 years. So entrepreneurship is on the radar, entrepreneurship is in their mind, and also the access to technology has been improving a lot. So I heard about the importance of digital skills, and I heard about the importance of being connected. But also we are in front of a generation that is technology savvy and media savvy. So that's also a great asset. And also the fact that we are, and we could see that in many countries where we operate at ITC in terms of innovation, again, it's not about only technology, we are in front of a socially conscious generation. And it's not about only being an entrepreneur to make money or to be an entrepreneur. It's also being an entrepreneur to make good things. And social entrepreneurship has been really increasing in the continent and in many countries around the world. And what's interesting is this consciousness about making business for good. So you're going to tell me this is beautiful, but how do we, and this entrepreneurship and innovative spirit of this younger generation? Well, we could see as well the consequences of the COVID-19 in many countries, and we managed to do a survey around our young entrepreneurs through the platform that we have, our young entrepreneurs, and the YE community, it's called, yecommunity.com. I invite you to go there, it's free. And the one thing that has importance of institutions, but what we mean by institutions is the measure incubators, accelerators, tech hubs, chambers of commerce, these trade support institutions, those bodies that make the link between the policymakers and the young entrepreneurs. And these institutions are crucial, and they are part of an ecosystem that needs to be strengthened. And when we talk about an ecosystem, and I mean, my colleague Ian alluded to that, it's not only doing training on entrepreneurship, this is good, but also connecting the dots between the different actors that are active to support young entrepreneurs in the respective countries and make them understand the opportunities about the AfCFTA. I think that is very important, because if we stick to saying we have this wonderful agreement and the continent will benefit from that, it's great. But how can we make the younger generation understand the challenges, but also the opportunities mainly that are behind this agreement? Critical role to play around that. And building up ecosystem, this is something that we strongly believe with many colleagues here and with counterparts that we are working on in diversity of countries, not only in the African continent. It's having access to this ecosystem, not only to for entrepreneurship, not only for access to finance, but also access to skills. I heard before the vocational training being mentioned. Very important to connect the dot between the educational system and the need of the private sector to fuel it with the right skills. And so the ecosystem around entrepreneurs and young entrepreneurs is also vital in order as well to exchange among peers. So it's not only like a push of information or the good practices towards the younger generation, but also making them connected and making them exchange about good practices and making them exchange about how do they overcome those obstacles and how they can innovate together. And another point I wanted to make, and this is a true story. I mentioned a lot of figures. I mentioned a lot of aspects around this important agreement and how to make it happen. Regarding Guinea-Conakry, and I was involved in a project there funded by European Union with the EU Trust Fund for the Sahel region, and I was involved in intervening in the mining region called in Bofa, and so there's a lot of bauxite in this region. And why I'm saying this, because 3 years ago I was there and I was talking to young people. I like talking to the young people in order to understand what are the concerns. And one of the concerns at that time of Guinea was irregular migration to the European Union. So it turned to be a real problem, and with all the consequences. And I was in front of 30 young people there in Bofa and asked them, are you tempted about this journey? 27 of them put their hand in the air, and knowing exactly what was going to happen in the journey to Europe. So it's not that they didn't know, they know. And I was so shocked about that. And with the support of the European Union, we could revitalize a center of the youth there and make it only support entrepreneurship, but also a center to support employability. Because it's not about there were no job in the region. There are many mining companies acting there, and they had 500 jobs listed on an Excel sheet. The problem is the connect, the demand, and the supply, and there was no connector in between. And so thanks to the support again of the Guinean government and the European Union, we could make it happen and we could be the connector. And so the point I want to make here is that what's important among us and what's important for young entrepreneurs to innovate, to be able to innovate and to be able to be connected to market, we need to be the connectors. And all of us, in order for them to strive and to make this AfCFTA something very concrete in the future. So I wanted to add with this little anecdote, and I thank you for your patience for listening to me, Mr. Chairman, and giving back you the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. David Cordobes from the International Trade Center. Thank you for the anecdote and a very lively presentation. Given how late it is for a lot of people, thank you so very much. Now, we have entered the Q&A session, but it's just going to be for 5 minutes because we're just a little over time. So I already see some hands up. Mr. Yeomens and then James Muro. So Mr. Yeomens, kindly unmute your mic and ask your question, please.
Wonderful. Thank you, all the organizers, for this impactful conference. My name is Yofi Mensah, originally from Ghana. I live in Maryland, USA. I've been involved in the Global Institute and also have other connections with other organizations. My major question is, how do we streamline all these excitement? Because we know that my training is civil structural engineering, and I'm also a data scientist. So I'm getting all these ideas from this conference, and I'm going to talk to my team, and we're going to go and start developing things. But how do we streamline these processes so that my team and I do not replicate something that is already existing? So that, the one thing about our continent is we have so much talent, but the talent is so much divided. Whereas in the West, we have an Amazon or eBay, and they're all like a global conglomerate. So how do we streamline these processes so that we know that one company is in charge of this and is continental? That's my major question. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Yo. Next question, James Muro. James Muro.
Yes, thank you very much. And I'm really... Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I'm very happy about what we are seeing. And I've just been excited by the presentation by the Chamber President and the Chairman of the Great Lakes, by the mere fact that he is actually saying what solutions are being offered to the most vulnerable members of the business community, and that is the MSMEs. Now, I know there are many organizations in Africa and in the world that keep talking about, and we've talked about this COVID-19 pandemic that may wipe out a lot of businesses. And I would like to hear more about what other institutions are doing to offer practical solutions to this dire situation where the most vulnerable and yet the bottom of the pyramid, where we have those critical numbers, may disappear from the face of the earth. If that bottom of the pyramid collapses, then the whole ecosystem collapses. So I'd like to hear more of those practical solutions, because we've done a lot of talking and theoretical solutions that are not practical. Practical solutions are where you keep a business sustained for the future, so that once we overcome this terrible pandemic, then we will have some building blocks to build back economies. So I know the MSMEs are critical building blocks for future economies, and I'd like to suggest that more institutions come up with practical solutions, as we have seen from the Kenya National Chamber, offering solutions to the most vulnerable members of the business community. I'd also like to see more intelligent information. I don't know why we don't have intelligent information that can also sustain the businesses, where we have a repository of good information that can help people do business across borders with little or no restrictions. Thank you very much.
James and you and all those who are seeking to ask a question, may I kindly remind you that the APSS, the Africa Private Sector Summit, has a participants forum. If you have not yet joined it, you can direct message me and I'll give you a link so you can join. So far, we have about 230 participants who have joined. We will be weeding out those who are not action oriented by the end from tomorrow going. But judging by the questions you are asking, we see that you want to offer solutions, you want to make contributions. So please, we need to have you in that forum so that we can take the conversation as we move on to the next series. This series is the maiden edition. There will be 6 other ones that will build on the back of this. And then there's also a call for papers, 15 questions around the African Continental Free Trade Area, around Agenda 2063 and so on. It's all on the website. Feel free to check that out. Then also there's a survey for those who may not be able to ask questions now. So that's www.africaprivatesector.org, privatesectorsummit.org. So please join the private sector participants forum so that we can take the conversation further and begin to, make history for the African Continental Free Trade Area. Thank you. Dr. Angela Abbas, the floor is yours.
Hello, please, we have Roger.
I don't see Roger. Okay, Roger, if your hand is up, I don't see you, but please go ahead and make your contribution.
Yeah, thank you so much. My name is Roger here in Alberta in Canada. My question or my small contribution, I refer to 2019, the World Bank reported that the diaspora sent back home $43 billion. And this money is without the African countries' investment. Our countries never invested a penny, but we were able to send this much money back home. When we look at China, China is how China is investing a lot of money in its diaspora. China has brought banks in Africa. The Chinese can go and borrow money from there, start businesses, and bring all kinds of products from China. On the other hand, the African Union and the African countries, they want to reap from the diaspora, but it is lacking investment. They don't want to invest in the diaspora. I don't know if it's a question for this group to start pushing. I pay a mortgage here, I pay my car loan, investing again. We sent home $43 billion. What if they invested? We should not rely on the IMF or the World Bank. These are people who have failed us before. Now it is time we raise our own children in the diaspora, can contribute immensely. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Now we want to keep to time. We've just run a little bit over. So one minute for each question. Dr. Angela Abbas, James McCown, and then Randolph Norris. Then we wrap up and close.
Okay, good evening. Hello, this is Dr. Angela. Can you hear me?
Yes, good evening. Please go ahead.
Okay. I want to just raise some concerns, not really a question. One of the concerns I want to raise is the ease of doing business in Africa. On Tuesday, when Mr. Anatog was talking from Nigeria, he mentioned certain things they are doing, the government of Nigeria is doing to ease business. My concern is, in this time of COVID, when you want to travel out of the country, you are made to undergo a test, coronavirus test, and you are made to pay for that test when going out of the country and when coming out of the country. Is that kind of thing to encourage people to go out and do business? That's one of it. Another one is that the core people, the women that need to be empowered, some of them are semi-literates. Now, there are so many bottlenecks in financial institutions, and talking about financial inclusion, some of them don't even have bank accounts. How do they do business? There are policies that have to be put in place, economic policies that have to be put in place. There are certain things that government will have to do to create enabling environment, to cater for this class of people, the people that really need to be empowered, the people that are hungry, those that are poor, the wretched. There are certain things that can be done so that they can be equipped, so that the skills will be enhanced. The government should look into those areas. When we're talking about all these cross-border business and this other, we talk about the wretched, those people, the rural women, those that really need to be empowered. That is my concern. I want us to look into that area and see how we can help our hungry people. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Angela Abbas. Lepino. Lepino, the floor is yours. Okay, if we're having difficulty, James McCown.
All right, thank you very much for the opportunity. I think this session has been very inspiring. Some of the presentations have been, very, very impressive. My issue is, we keep talking about what we must do. Africa must innovate, universities must train students for the job market. How do we make the youth more responsible and more responsive to new ideas? We have talked so much about the how. We know all the questions, all the questions that are being asked. We already know them. We already know the problems. So I think that there's no need rehashing these problems. I am interested, some of the speakers did very well by touching on the specifics, exactly what they are doing. And I think that's where the focus should be. What are people doing and how are they doing it? How are they impacting? These are the areas we need to focus more than, the long speeches and rehashing all the stuff we already know. We know that this COVID pandemic has created a huge spark for innovation in Africa. There were many products that we never imagined we could produce ourselves, but we are doing them now. Going forward, how do we sustain these innovations? How do we add value to these innovations? And are people already doing it? And how are they doing it? How can we replicate these things in other African countries? How do we, for example, maybe Ghana is producing nose mask. One country is producing disinfectant. How do we do the trade? How do we do the exchanges? These are the practical things I think we need to focus on. We have talked too much and we have become a continent of talkatives. It's about time we stop talking and start doing. And I think that should be the focus going forward. And thank you very much, and to all the speakers and to also the conveners of this wonderful platform. Thank you.
And I think on this note, I regrettably have to end here, but have no fear that you can leave your comments and your questions in the chat space as well as the forum. Please, I'm sending the link to join the forum, the participants forum right now, so that you can ask your question there. We will do follow-ups on that for sure and get back to you. But thank you very much. It's been a day. It's been a very exciting day. 3 very interesting sessions. We spoke to the issue of women, youth, SMEs. We spoke to innovation. We spoke to entrepreneurship. And a lot of very interesting things were unpacked all around how we need to make after work. But I think at the end of the day, the biggest thing that we need to take away from here, whether it's day 1 or day 4 or day 5, is that the Africa Private Sector Summit, is a new conversation on not just doing business, but on how to make the African Continental Free Trade Area equitable. The AfCFTA Secretariat cannot do all the work on their own. They are only facilitating member states and the way that they are supposed to work. So it is for non-actors, non-governmental actors like ourselves, like this summit, to support them in offering ideas like a kind of think tank so that they can also do their work a lot better. The role of academia is to ensure that all the knowledge, all the conversations that have come from academia has not gone to waste. Because at the end of the day, whether you're in private sector or you're public sector, it is a teacher that taught you. It is the teacher who may not be rich right now that taught you, the big man who is a private sector guru somewhere. It was an English teacher or mathematics teacher. Academia continues to be a very, very important sector that we must not forget. And if we are to create the enabling environment that we are so seeking to have around AfCFTA, and so one of the biggest outcomes of this summit is to ensure not only just the model law that we're seeking to get and have universities have a competition, but also a curriculum on regional economic communities, on the African Continental Free Trade Area, and so on, areas around Africa's integration, in which academia will be central, but also the private sector, which is a sector that has had many challenges because of need to have them also on board. So the tripartite conversation, the new conversation, is a tripartite one: private sector, academia, and public sector. And that is what the Africa Private Sector Summit speaks to. So thank you very, very much to all of you for taking time out of your busy schedules to stay the whole course of the 3 hours, to be with us, ask questions, and so on and so forth, and make your presentations. Tomorrow is the final day. There will be a signing between the Association of African Universities and the Pan-African Chamber of Commerce and Industry, an important MOU that will take the relationship further. So we hope that you'll be able to join us for that as we round up the whole summit and then get back to you on series 2. So thank you once again, and we hope that you all have a great day wherever you are, and have a good evening as well. We hope to see you tomorrow, day 5, #APSS, #righting biz wrongs. My name is Ike Benson Moro. Have a great day, good evening, and goodbye.